And Matt, look at that.
Okay. Let me call the Norfolk County Advisory Board Finance Committee meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Let's do a roll call, but first I have to read this. On Thursday, March 12th, 2020, Governor Baker issued an order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20. That order was effective immediately until it is rescinded or the state of emergency is terminated. So we are on a remote meeting today. So the first item of business is the FY22 first supplemental. Let me call the roll call first. I'm sorry about that. Carl Balduff.
Present.
Eric Beckerman.
Here.
Paul Connors.
Present.
Joe Reardon.
Here.
And Elizabeth Childs is here. Okay. Our first order of business is the FY22 first supplemental appropriation, specifically the request for the Registry of Deeds legal fees. And as you remember, at our last Finance Committee, we handled all of the other supplemental appropriations with a recommendation that they go forward, but this one required more information. So I want to just give you a little background, and then I want to open it up for discussion. So the executive committee met with the register yesterday, and we learned that the register has already incurred $27,000 of expenses for legal fees, which was invoiced to the registry dated 9/15 and 9/27. The request from the registry is for a supplemental appropriation for $40,000 to be funded from the Deeds Excise Fund. Before we take up that specific request, I'd like to set some context for our role in this particular request. We on the NCAB all share in our obligation to be accountable checks and balances on the county's finances. In that role, the request is different than our usual supplemental appropriation requests that are brought to us. They are brought to us in anticipation of future incurred necessary expenses that are not yet funded. This expense was already incurred without available funding. Stewardship of public funds and public fiscal oversight 101 is that you do not expend money that has not been appropriated. In fact, it is in direct violation of section 34 and 35 of our enabling statutory language. With this particular expense, far be it for me to comment on the rightness of the expense itself. That's actually not the issue. But we can and should comment on the way this request for funds came to us. It is our duty in exercising our role as part of the financial controls of the county. This is not a punitive or a personal action. It's our obligation and our responsibility to decide how we should handle this unusual and really violating situation. No department head, whether elected or appointed, should ever get the impression that the board charged by statute to be the fiscal check on the county finances is simply a rubber stamp on expenditures or a participant in violating the law. So we are presented with a dilemma. The county is obligated to pay the $27,000 of legal fees that have already been incurred. And we are statutorily responsible to make sure that the NCAB is not a participant in shoddy public financial practices at best, and at worst, unethical or illegal practices. So I am absolutely open to Finance Committee members' proposals about how we move forward, how we resolve this dilemma. Clearly, we have to resolve it. And we just need to think about what the implications are of how we resolve it. So with that, I guess I would just ask Eric, you were in the meeting yesterday. Joe, you were in the meeting yesterday. The other thing I would say is that the register, we asked the register yesterday if there would be more legal expenses, and he cannot give us that answer. So it's not clear, even though this first particular issue is resolved, it's not clear that there won't be future legal issues. And his existing legal fees fund is completely depleted prior to the $27,000 invoice. So I guess I'm going to turn it over first to Eric and Joe, and Carl and Paul jump right in. But we really do need to figure out how to deal with this. All right. Joe or Eric, you want to say anything? Because you were in the meeting yesterday with the executive committee meeting.
Joe, do you have
Defer to
anything?
Eric. Go ahead, Eric.
Okay, I guess my take on this is kind of simple, and just to reiterate what Elizabeth said, the validity of what happened, why the expense was incurred is not the issue. Whether it was valid, whether it was the suit itself was legal or not is not our responsibility. Our responsibility is strictly financial. So the way I look at it is this: the registry had a budget of $7,000 when they started the year. They incurred $27,000 worth of bills. I don't know if any more of that budget was already used. So providing the fact, or if we assume that the $7,000 that was appropriated was not used, that would leave a balance in the account needed of $20,000. Does everybody follow where I'm going?
Yes, Eric, I think though we do know that number. John, I'm going to turn to you for 1 second, John Cronin. I think that that $7,000 was expended before this invoice. Can I just verify that?
Sure. Yes, the register was appropriated $7,000 in FY21, excuse me, FY22. Prior to yesterday's meeting, our books, if you will, indicated that the registry had expended $6,825, expended, encumbered, committed,
Okay.
of that 7,000.
Okay, so
What, if I may?
Yeah,
one
go ahead,
second.
I'm sorry.
There's a part two to that. After yesterday's meeting, your group asked the register for additional information relative to the $27,000 figure that he announced. The register provided that, and according to this, and one of the things you should understand is the information I just gave you relative to the spending to date is what's in our budget sense. That's what's in the accounting system. The other information that goes above the $7,000 are commitments via invoices. The system will not allow you to put those expenses, Eric, against the budget because it exceeds the obligation ceiling. So from what I can gather, based on what the register has produced, if you look on the last page of the documentation from their invoices from their lawyer, the total amount that's been expended includes the $6,825 plus the new $20,418 for a total commitment so far in FY21 of $27,243.04. But just to be clear, that additional amount above 7,000, it's just an invoice. They don't have the resources to put it into budget sense. Okay.
okay,
Great.
so
Thank you. Okay, Eric, please continue.
okay, so if the total, all right, so they had 7,000, they got a bill, let's use round numbers. They had 7,000, they got a bill for 27,000, they need 20. They're asking for 40. What, I don't know what the purpose of that additional request is. What I would suggest, and I would submit, would be to, again, providing that based on information that we have now, that the issue may be somewhat resolved, and assuming that there is no further legal action on this particular issue, then my suggestion would be to appropriate the remaining amount of the bill that's outstanding, which would be $20,000, plus replenish the line item with another 7,000 for the operating budget. I think that's reasonable to not deplete. I mean, we don't want to fund just to the amount that we owe, because what's going to happen is 3 weeks from now, he could have another bill that comes in for $500 and we won't be able to pay it under the statute. So I would say the compromise in my mind would be to fund to approve the line item transfer, but not for the 40,000, for an adjusted amount of what I would suggest would be 34,000, which would be 27 plus 7. That's
Okay,
just
all right.
my 2
Okay,
cents on it.
all right, that's your, okay, so that's a possible solution offered. Any other possible solutions? Joe, Chairman Reardon, do you have a comment too? Because you were part of that meeting yesterday
Right.
too. And then let's go to Carl and Paul.
My take on it is this. And if I can make back up, Eric, is that going to be out of the 64D as proposed? Is that what you're proposing?
Yeah, I would still propose it would be a reserve transfer from the reserve, from the excise deeds reserve, which is where he's asking for it to come from in the first place, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
So my take on it is this. I do not believe that any good administrator would ever spend money that he didn't have or she didn't have. It is bad management. It's, as I see it, although not an attorney, it's illegal. It's in bad faith. And I don't think that anyone should be able to do that. Certainly, the county is required to pay the amount due. But I think that there is another way perhaps to get around this and ensure that the integrity of the process is maintained. And by that, I mean how the register in his office goes about their financial management. And that was probably, in my opinion, the original solution that was proposed by the register, and that was to transfer the money from his printing account. I do not think that dipping into any other funds is going to, A, be financially prudent, and B, be agreeing with someone who's violated the law. I just don't think it's appropriate. There has to be limits. And perhaps things have gone on in the past where someone did this or someone did that. This isn't the past. The past 2 years have been about fiscal responsibility, about moving the county forward and not backwards. So I am of the opinion that this process should revert back to his original request to take money out of his printing account, which can be easily, and if I'm not correct, that can be easily approved by the director, correct?
Yes.
Yep. And he's just going to have to live with it. I mean, you manage money the way you manage money. And if you're going to move between accounts and you can talk to the director about it, well, that's fine. But I don't think a supplemental request is going to work because he doesn't necessarily even need it if he has money in other accounts. My opinion.
All right. That also leaves the advisory board out of needing to take a vote to support something that was initially illegal.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Carl, Paul, you guys have done this a long time. What do you guys think we should do with it? Have you ever seen this happen before?
Oh.
No.
To
What do you think we should do here?
the chair, this is Carl.
Yeah.
No, I don't ever recall seeing this happen. I kind of see three issues here. One, how to fund it. Two, if we're going to fund it, and all the issues around incurring expenses when you don't have the funding for it. And then, that's, and thirdly, I guess I wanted to see and said, okay, as we kick this around, it's nice for the finance committee to ponder this thing. But are there recommendations? There's other people in play here, I would say, and said the county director, the commissioners, and possibly Joe DiOria as well, and said, there are protocols for this, where are we on this thing as far as the commissioners and the director are concerned? And, it's territory that I'm just, even as long as I've been at this with the county, I'm not familiar with. So I'd like to hear something from those entities as well.
Okay. All right. Let me hear from Paul Connors and then we'll go back and get those entities to speak, Carl. All right, Paul, what do you
I
think?
agree with Carl, and I've never seen anything like this in all of my years right now happen. I'm inclined to support what Eric is saying, which makes some sense. But on the other hand, Joe Reardon made more sense when he said, there's money already in the budget. We should be using the money that's in the budget. And if we have to address it at a later date that he is out of money legally, and he incurred debt in a legal fashion, then we have to pay it then. That would be a supplemental budget down the road, 6 months maybe. But in the meantime, I don't think we should be funding out of the any account right now if he has money in his printing account right now. And I supported this at our first finance committee meeting back about 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, which is what put it off till yesterday's meeting to give the registrar a chance to explain himself and to make a better argument for his case. So I'm inclined to agree with Joe right now, and Carl's right. We should hear from Joe Dioria and from the director and any other people, and the registrar if he's online with us right now.
Okay. All right, Eric, you want to go ahead first, then we'll get to the other people. Yep.
Madam Chairperson, thank you. There's one other point I wanted to make that we haven't really talked about, and I don't know if this is really even a concern, but if the registrar incurred an increase in their legal budget due to this issue that we all know about, what about county commissioner's legal budget? I mean, are we looking, is there any problems on that side as well?
I'll take care of that.
I don't know. We can ask that. Might come forward in the future. I don't know. We'd have to ask about that.
Right?
Yeah.
Want to answer?
Please.
We can answer.
You want a response?
Okay,
Nova?
yeah, do you want to explain to that commissioner or?
Sure, John's going to explain it, but we
Okay,
anticipated this question.
okay.
So the county commissioner's line item for legal services at FY 22 totaled, stand by, $95,000. 1 second, please. Way too many papers. We've expended approximately $45,000 to date, which exceeds the run rate based on first quarter expenditures. We have ample resources, Eric, to carry us at least through December, but we'll monitor the impact of those legal bills as we approach that benchmark. Clearly, to answer your question, there has been a financial impact, but it's not enough for us to, at this point in the fiscal year, request any additional funds.
Right, and I wouldn't have expected that it would have. I just wanted to make that point is that, we're not talking about $27,000 here. We're actually talking about probably closer to 50,000 that this whole issue has cost the county. And I just want that to be in people's heads. But I'll submit that I agree with Paul and Chairman Redden that the taking the money from the printing rather than doing a reserve transfer does make a lot more sense, and I would definitely support that.
Okay, all right. Okay, let's hear next from Joe Dioria. Can you make a comment here? And then let's hear from the commissioners or vice versa. Either way, I can do it either way.
Sure.
Joe, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, so I talked with John Cronin today. There are some statutes. I'm sorry, my lighting's not very good.
It's all right.
There are some statutes that cover this, that no department can spend without an appropriation. And if our office was to pay bills without an appropriation, the treasurer could be held liable. But because he hasn't actually spent that money, everything's kosher with our office. We're good there. But has this happened before that I'm aware of? Maybe with the construction thing occasionally where, like I know with the dome, we went out to bid and turned out the bid prices were more than what we had. So we had to look for money, but no money was incurred before we found where the money was going to come from.
All right. Commissioners, you want to say something about this? I know that you approved it, and I want to just say one of the things that Commissioner Collins, you had explained to us was that it was a very difficult situation because you were on the defendant end of the suit, and you didn't want to be seen as being retaliatory or have a conflict there. So it puts you in a different role than us, actually. So Commissioner Shea or Commissioner Collins, you want to speak to that a little bit?
Speak to this.
You can if you'd like.
Well, Madam Chairman, obviously we need to pay this bill and obviously we need to pay all of our bills. If when we approved it, I believe it was September 29th or 24th.
About 2 weeks ago. Yes.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. Of course, when you look at it and you're suing yourself or you're paying to have someone sue you, makes you feel a little strange. I do feel a little less than happy about the whole arrangement of going to a lawsuit about a personnel decision, albeit not perfect or not perfect, but an ongoing personnel decision between any department head and the commissioners. That probably what precipitated this, but reluctantly, I think we have to pay it. If we can find it out of another line, I think it's a much better solution than using other available funds the way we did it. But I don't think there was any discussion 2 weeks ago. I'm going to defer to John or Peter. I was not here for that actual meeting. I was actually in the hospital, but I knew it was on there and I looked at the agenda.
We're glad you're back, Commissioner Shea.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back too. But the whole idea of not living by some of these general laws keeps creeping back into this, and I'm just not happy with it. I've been worried about it all along. It was more in our management letters on other issues. I hate going to the general laws, but if we made mistakes in the past, this is what we're trying to clean up. So the best way is to take it out of printing one of the other accounts over there. I personally think that's the best way. However, I think we need to pay this bill. But I was disappointed that we're incurring legal costs over a fight between management and a department head. It's counterproductive to what we're trying to do here. I really think it is. But whatever way we can go, I think John has more to add to that unless Commissioner Collins. I don't know if Commissioner Stady is on yet.
I
I
don't
know
see
he's
him
going to
yet.
be, I know he's going to be here at 6:30, but
Okay, all right. John, can you add anything to that?
Um,
Commissioner Collins? Or John
I'll
Cronin?
defer to Commissioner Collins at this
Commissioner
point.
Collins, do you want to add anything to that?
I was having trouble joining in, so I'm just doing by the phone. So I'm kind of in and out on what we're doing.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly where we left off.
All right, all right. Let me go back to the county director. John, you want to add something to that?
So, sure, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. The matter up until yesterday afternoon was a clear-cut issue of where to draw the resources to resolve proposed legal costs associated with the registrar's request. On August 2nd, he submitted a transfer request to our office, and I looked at it. It was $40,000 out of his account 5295 printing and binding. In FY20.
I'll let you go.
All right, I'll call you later.
In FY22, that amount has been funded at $145,000. We looked at the historical spending associated with the registrar's account for binding, and in FY20, he spent approximately $130,000. And in FY21, he spent approximately $137,000. In each case, it's well above what would be a $105,000 balance if the transfer went through. So I said to the registrar, from a financial standpoint, you're putting yourself in immediate jeopardy this early in the fiscal year by underfunding a line item that you had clearly spent much higher amounts about. So I encouraged him to seek additional funding through supplemental means in this board. Yesterday, when it was announced that the total obligations associated with this expense exceeded the appropriation, it took me by surprise. I was not aware, despite attempts to learn, if they were holding invoices or expenses until yesterday afternoon, that they in fact incurred an additional $20,000 obligation. To just foot to what the chair started with, Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 35, Section 28B, Section G, says in part, no expenses may be incurred in excess of those shown in the approved budget. These are subset responses. You can feel free to read these references. Under section 34, no new or unusual expense shall be incurred or permanent contract made or salary increased until an appropriation sufficient thereof has been made by the advisory board on county expenditures. And in both cases, it's troubling to see that expenses, obligations were made against the county that did not have your authority. And from my world, that's an extraordinarily bad thing, and it cannot be tolerated. It may require some type of rebuke or some type of commentary from your board, because ultimately you were responsible for the oversight of the finances. I'm not sure if the register understood these concerns, but I take this very seriously. These funds are public funds, and as far as I'm concerned, resolving this is one thing. How do we avoid this going forward is almost as important. And I'm more concerned with the latter. So I'll yield to your board on the matter involving how to resolve the financial implications. I'm concerned with how do we stay within control as a financial operation and avoid this kind of a problem going forward. It's a serious issue, and we need to treat it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. I have two questions or comments that I wonder if we should think about as a finance committee. The first one is, if we were to do the transfer from the, if it wouldn't be up to us, we wouldn't have to do it as a finance committee. The county director could authorize the transfer from the printing line, but then backfilling that printing line with a future supplemental is really just continuing to fund something that was expended prior to an appropriation. And it just seems to me that the message should be really clear that we would expect that somehow the registry would try to live within their existing printing line item for FY22. I mean, that would be certainly a response that would be holding the registry accountable for managing their funding more efficiently. And the second thing I was thinking was that any future legal fees to be incurred should be brought forward before they are incurred. Because although, as you can see by the dates on the clerk's notice, the initial matter at hand was resolved as of July 27th. Yesterday, the register was very clear that he could not tell us that there would be no future legal fees incurred. So I think that we don't want to be in this situation. We can't be in this situation again. It's illegal. We have to do something about this so that we never participate in this again. So I was thinking about that it might be that the expectation would be before contracting or hiring any legal advice, in this case, the register would come forward and ask for a supplemental for his legal, and we asked for a supplemental at that time for his legal fees line item in anticipation of needing to incur more legal advice. So to receive more legal advice. So I don't know. I think we have a couple responses here that might protect us going forward a little bit. I don't know what people's responses are to that on the finance committee. I'm sorry, Chairman Reardon, we're running just a few minutes behind.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
It's important that we consider this now.
Okay. All right.
Madam
So-
Chair, if you will,
Yes. Yes,
Carl
Carl.
Baldoff here.
Yeah,
Let me
what do you
try and
think?
bring some closure to this thing because we
Yeah.
are running behind. So a couple of answers were given to the questions which I posed. Joe DiOrio weighed in, and although this thing may be somewhat outside of bounds, we're still in compliance in his world. Secondly, we heard from the commissioners that they favor paying the obligation. And thirdly, we heard from County Director Cronin that the sorts of funding had been discussed, and his recommendation was not to take it from existing budget line item budget, and that it would in fact be funded from the outside, that being the 64D. So to me, those are fairly well established now as a result of this conversation. I guess there's two more items. I saw Registrar O'Donnell come on. I don't know if you want to re-invite him to speak to the issue. And secondly, that, I'm in support, actually, I think, of following Eric Beckerman's recommendation earlier.
Okay, all right. In the interest of time, I think we've gotten our information from the register. So in the interest of time, I'm gonna move forward so we can get to our regular meeting. And then perhaps, unfortunately, perhaps maybe at that meeting, the register could speak too, because we'll have to do this again when we get to the whole board. Okay, Eric, you want to respond to that?
Well, no, I was just gonna say, I mean, I know that part of the purpose, one of the items on our agenda for tonight was to deal with this 40,000 and what we're gonna do with it.
Mhm.
So I would be willing to make a motion if that's what, basically, I would make a motion that we deny the $40,000 supplemental request in favor of a line item transfer through the director.
Okay, all right, that, we have a motion on the
That's really
floor.
the issue at hand right now, right?
Yep.
It's not how we're gonna pay it or whether we're gonna pay it, it's whether we want to recommend the $40,000 supplemental from the deeds excise, which is really what the issue here is. So my suggestion would be, my motion would be that we deny that request in favor of a line item transfer.
Okay, all right. So we have a motion on the table. Is there a second for that?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, is there any further discussion about that proposal?
Move the question.
Okay. Question's been moved and seconded, and we will call the roll call. Carl,
Yes.
Eric,
Aye.
Paul,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Elizabeth votes yes. Okay, so that's a recommendation we'll make to the Norfolk County Advisory Board to fund this $40,000, to deny the request for the supplemental and fund it the other way.
So it gets deferred to the next meeting?
Yes, we'll go to the next meeting. Okay, the rest of our agenda, I'm very mindful of our time here. I would like to, I'd like to table the minutes until our next meeting.
Don't move, Joe.
Okay,
Second.
all right, I have to call the roll, I'm sorry. Carl,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
chair votes aye. Okay, I'd like to table the future meeting calendar discussion.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. Carl,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay, any other topics? Let's table that as well. We don't even have to vote on that. Skip that, guys. We're just moving on. And adjourning it. Adjournment.
Motion to
Okay.
adjourn.
Do I have a
So
motion
moved.
to adjourn? Thanks,
Second.
Carl. Second?
Second.
Okay. Carl,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Paul,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and the chair votes aye. Thank you
Thank you,
very
Beth.
much. I really appreciate it. And we'll turn it over to you, Chairman Reardon.
Okay, if waiting for the high sign from Mr. Buckley that everyone is out of the waiting room.
Mr. Chair, everyone is here.
Everyone is here. Excellent. Would you be, well, actually, why don't we call the roll first and determine if we have a quorum, if you could, please?
I believe Ms. Clerk Beckerman has the role. And is very excited to.
I do. I can't wait. All right, so I will call the roll. Avon is here. Bellingham. Braintree,
Braintree here.
Brookline,
Here.
Canton,
Yes, sir, here.
Cohasset,
Here.
Dedham,
Yeah.
Dover, Foxborough,
Here.
Franklin,
Here.
Holbrook, Medfield, Medway,
Delightfully present.
Millis, Milton,
Here.
Needham,
Mr. Chairman, this is Dan Matthews from Needham. Needham does not have an appointed board member at this time, so we're not present for the role. I am here as an observer, and we hope to have a representative for your next meeting. Thank you,
Thank you very much, Mr. Matthews.
and good to see you all.
welcome.
Welcome back.
Norfolk,
Norfolk here.
Norwood,
Here.
Plainville,
Here.
Quincy,
Here.
Randolph,
Here.
Sharon,
Here.
Stoughton, Walpole,
Here.
Wellesley,
Here.
Westwood,
Here.
Weymouth, and Rentham.
What was the one before Rentham?
Weymouth.
Yeah.
Weymouth.
Is Rentham here?
No, he used to come all the time.
So, Phil, do we have a quorum?
I have a quorum of 76.84.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. It is customary here at the Norfolk County Advisory Board and that we take a moment to recognize our patriotism and pledge allegiance to the flag. Invite Commissioner Shea to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first item on the agenda after our call to order would be the tentative advisory board schedule for the next fiscal year. Moving into the work we need to do for the remainder of the fiscal year, we will definitely be meeting in December, where we will have a supplemental to consider. We will be meeting in the spring as well for a supplemental. During that time period, and I will in a moment recognize our Finance Committee Chair, Dr. Elizabeth Childs, there will be a lot of meetings of the Finance Committee. They will be moving out in different ways based upon the tenor of the budgetary process. So that may lead to a meeting in April. It may be a little bit later, but typically we try and do that as early as we can. This is Director Cronin's first budget with us, so we are cognizant of that as well. So we would ask your indulgence to bear with us on the scheduling towards that, but we will provide ample opportunity to get your calendar squared away. The last meeting will most likely be in June for the final supplemental. We would have already gone through the budget process, the hearing and the vote. So that would be the last item for us to consider for the year. We will keep you updated. And Dr. Childs, if I could recognize you for a moment to share the calendar that you have for your Finance Committee, because it might lend itself to the conversation.
Yes, of course. Happy to. The Finance Committee has meetings tentatively scheduled every month, one a month through the rest of fiscal year 22. And we can get that sent to everybody. So you see those dates ahead of time. They are subject to change because we want to make sure when our meetings happen, they're happening with substantive agendas. And sometimes the meeting date has to be pushed a week earlier or later. So they are, and we do have proposed agenda items for those meetings so that we can have some sense of the splitting the work out throughout the year.
Thank you very much. Moving towards the next item, this is the first meeting of this particular year when we operate. We operate on a fiscal year, but appointments aren't until August. It's a very confusing system. We may have to address that down the road. But having seated the board, we'd like to share with you some of the ideas and thoughts that were put together at the executive committee meeting yesterday. This body is representative of every community in the county, and every community in the county has a stake in what goes on here. To that end, we want to remind those of our colleagues who are been around for a long time that we're going to continue to work as diligently as we have. To the new members, we want you to know that we welcome you. We invite you to be a part of this, to be an active participant in what goes on here at the Norfolk County Advisory Board. And this short presentation will hopefully make you feel warm and fuzzy about the work that we do and invite you to join with us. So, Mr. Buckley, please.
All set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The title of the presentation is the Norfolk County Advisory Board Responsibilities, Roles, and Results. If you could go to the next slide, please. During this year, 2021 into 2022, the executive committee put together a list of goals. Most of them are modest goals. Some of them are a little more work involved, but majority of them are modest goals with the aim of bringing together a committee that is, an advisory board that is working with committees that are participating in the process, that we're getting members to the meetings and the like. So to that end, our goals are to develop a new committee structure, to review our bylaws, engage new members by establishing an orientation process. When I was first appointed to this board, I walked into the Aggie, I had my little packet in my hand, and that was it. It was like walking into the high school cafeteria, which of course it is, and not knowing where to sit. So we want to change that to make sure people are connected to one another. Shortly, within the next few weeks, each of you will receive a member survey. And that member survey will bring to light the competencies, constituencies of our members. That way, if there is an issue in a certain area, if we're looking to strategize on something in particular, we know that one particular member is an engineer, one particular member may be an attorney, one particular member may have been a mayor. I'm making all this up, but I think you get the gist that having those competencies available to the executive committee will allow us to ask the people with the best skills to participate in the work that's needed to be done. As you can or could hear, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, but I'm going to say credit Mr. Matthews for representing Needham, although he is unable to vote. 9 communities are not here tonight. One in particular, first time I met him was at a meeting last year, and I don't know when he's come. And that's not fair to the board, and it's certainly not fair to the member community. So we're going to try to encourage 100% board participation at our meetings, bringing people together to do the work we are supposed to be doing. On the fiscal side, and this may be one where sleeves will need to be rolled up. Following last year's budget, it was determined that there were several areas of weakness that the county needed to address as we move forward. The Aggie, the registry, and the maintenance department. Those are individual departments that questions were raised for moving on to the next fiscal year and the next budget, how we approach them. So that's going to involve some hard work, and hopefully that will allow the advisory board to get a handle ourselves on these financial issues so that we can respond appropriately when the commissioners propose their budget. Another piece that we're hoping to do, and this depends on a bunch of different things, including COVID, unfortunately, is that we would like to host the advisory board meetings at different county properties. For those of you who are down county, this means we could be going to Rentham District Court. You don't have to drive up. For people in Quincy, to drive down, and typically we do something at President's, but also to go to Stoughton District Court, to look at what's available for county buildings and see if there's space there where we could meet and get a sense of what goes on there. Because education is huge, and having education sessions on county operations, whether it is outside of a meeting, through having meetings at a particular location, all lend itself to a more informed board. Another commitment we have is to maintain our transparency. In the past 2 years, this board has done a tremendous job of being transparent. Anyone can go on to the county website and can see the information that we have shared with one another, the minutes of meetings, budget matters, can also watch the Zoom meetings online. So we're going to continue to do that. And lastly, and we're going to speak to this a little bit later when we discuss the ARPA program, but our members are ambassadors for county government, and we'd like them to really go out into their communities and tell them remind them, this is what county government does. Last year, Chair Collins, Director Mullen, and I presented to the Milton Select Board, and they were amazed that the county does so many great things. There are other communities as well, particularly with people in and out of select boards or town or city council that may not be aware. And I think that it's part of our role in speaking to the financial picture of it, that people are aware of it. And so we're going to encourage members to be ambassadors. Next slide, please, Bill. Nope. The enabling legislation for our statutory powers is summed up here. The section itself is relatively long, and feel free to look it up and read the entire passage, and I would encourage you to do so, actually. But in terms of the power we have, the Advisory Board on County Expenditures is able to review the proposed budget to increase, decrease, alter, or revise. Basically, this group is an organization that is a check on the commissioners, in that we have another perspective on the budget matters. We have our communities in mind, and we have the authority to vote on that and to adjust it and send it back to the commissioners. That is the fundamental role, and that is our statutory power. However, with that are different pieces that, in my opinion, have been exposed as being helpful over the past couple of years, and that is taking deeper dives on individual departments before it comes to a budget vote, getting additional supportive information. And I think that through a different type of committee structure, we might be better able to do that and be more informed as to how the budget is presented. Before, or when I first came on the board, the budget was presented in its actual form, which is a line-by-line numbers and different entities that are requesting the numbers. It's really difficult to understand. Over the past few years, the advisory board has adopted presentations and greater communication to help people understand that and see it in a different format. And it's been very successful, and we are committed to doing that. Next slide, Bill. Most of you are serving or have served in municipal government or state government or county government in some way. And we just like to remind people about why we're here and what we're supposed to be doing. In any position, we are supposed to be using reasonable care and doing a good job, providing that reasonable care that the ordinary prudent person would exercise. That is really important, that we maintain that commitment to fulfill the oath of our office and do the work that we're supposed to do. First and foremost, that means showing up. But from there, it means keeping all of that in mind as we take votes or make decisions that affect the taxpayers in Norfolk County. We also want to be aware of service before self. This is public service. We're here to help our communities and the residents of them. And in that, we want to make sure that that remains our focus, and that our office, each of our offices, is never used for personal gain. We are solely here to represent the residents of the appointing municipalities and the residents of the county and county government in general. And lastly, being honest and open, being transparent. We want to continue to be transparent, and our members should be transparent in the work of the advisory board. Maintaining all of the ethics rules, maintaining the commitment to the open meeting law, maintaining all of our adherence to other Massachusetts laws and regulations to ensure that what we are doing is an open and honest process and that people can easily get information. To that end, I will be putting out in the survey a request that you confirm that you have taken the ethics course. Every 2 years, we need to take an ethics course as public officials. And I just want to remind you of that. If you haven't taken it, it's pretty easy, as you know, to do it online, but please make sure that all of the members have that, and we'll ask that in the survey. Thanks, Bill. Responsibilities to the board. So we have a responsibility to our constituent communities and the residents of the county, but we have a responsibility to the board and each other. Number one, regularly attend and participate in meetings, abide by the laws and regulations, comply with all legal and ethical requirements, openly consider serving on a board committee. The board committees do a tremendous job, but many hands make light work. And again, with the different competencies that we may find through the survey, we may be asking people to step up and to serve so that county government is able to move forward and be even better than it is now. We'd like to complete an annual assessment of the advisory board. So at the end of the year, going through and asking questions. Did you get the information in a timely manner? Did you have an opportunity to ask questions? Do you feel that you are representing the communities you serve here? And are you representing the county and the communities you serve? All of those pieces will come together so that we'll be able to chart a course forward in the next coming years. Bill? So there are 4 roles that I envision a board member having, 4 different hats. The first is as a fiduciary, fulfilling all the legal, ethical, and financial responsibilities we have as advisory board members. The other is a collaborator, and collaboration doesn't always happen, but we have a commitment and should have a commitment to working with each other, with the officers of the board, but also with the county director and county administration to have the working relationships we need to move the county forward. Again, being an ambassador, being out there in the community in a positive and effective manner, and then strategizing, being a strategist, utilizing the competencies that you have to contribute to the work of the advisory board. Our commitment to the members and to each other is to make sure that we have productive and efficient board meetings, that we'll use a consent agenda as needed for things like minutes and the like, timely electronic distribution of board agenda packets, creating an active committee structure to engage members, open, honest, and effective communication, and then the plan not only to have the board self-evaluation, but to actually put it into play in making some changes as necessary. Bill? To summarize, Norfolk County was established when communication was by written communication and delivered by horseback. Today, we're using smartphones and video conferencing, yet some county departments and some county practices are stalled, operating on tradition and the status quo, or even on historical precedent. In 2021, we must operate not only in the present, but we must be prepared for the future. In order to do this, it'll take all of us working together to make county government be a significant part of our communities and provide tremendous service to all the residents of the county. So I would open up, if anyone had any questions in the consideration of time, I would respectfully suggest that we could talk offline on them because this is just a presentation and there'd be no vote or anything like that. But I welcome all of the ideas and thoughts that you have about this. And I, again, want to welcome all the new members. We're lucky to have you and we look forward to working with you. The next item will be the fiscal 22 first supplemental appropriation, and this will be the operating appropriation. This was taken up by the Finance Committee at the meeting that we held about 2 weeks ago. And I recognize Dr. Childs to speak to that, and we'll recognize the director as well.
Mr. Chairman, I think we should let the director first walk the board through the budget, and I can share with the whole board the recommendations
Excellent.
of the committee after he's done that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Childs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things that I wanted to do effectively with respect to the time this evening is use the Word document that I believe everyone got in their packet. Associated with that is a spreadsheet for reference, and I will leave that for your design and inquiry if you have any questions to draw from. But I wanted to present an overview of our financial position this evening because it's not just about supplemental reserve draw, but it's also about the distribution of our resources into areas within the county's portfolio that will greatly benefit the county going forward. We start off with our surplus from FY21. By all measures, it was historic. The amount of money generated by the county for FY21 from FY21 surplus totaled $5,288,511.54. That amount of money also included a $500,000 draw that was used towards the FY22 budget. Consequently, the operating surplus becomes $4,788,511.54. What I've done, if you are observing the Word document, is I've broken the presentation out into 7 different sections. Under section 1, I offer, in addition to the numbers I just read to you, a brief history of what the surplus in Norfolk counties looked like over the last several years. And clearly, we have more than doubled what we had seen on the high water mark from FY20. Moving on, as we now see what the development of the surplus is, what do we plan to do with it? The first line of thinking was that we should propose to reinforce our stabilization account. The proposal includes a transfer to request $1,045,277.54 to our stabilization account. The county, currently has $3,875,117.29 in stabilization, or 11.97% of our FY22 operating budget. We're striving towards a goal of achieving a fund balance of 20% of current fiscal year operating budget. This new financial benchmark is called for in the Abrahams Group report and will demonstrate sound fiscal management to our bond rating agency and auditors and other stakeholders. If you're familiar with most local community guidelines, the stabilization fund balance in most communities does not usually reach that high of a level. However, in Norfolk County, given the rather tenuous nature of the revenue generations that come into our coffers each year, we felt it was prudent to bring the stabilization levels up to 20% to weather some expected downturns in revenue and funds associated with registry deeds, excise, and so forth. It's basically hedging against the volatility of a market that would really impact our operating budget in years to come. And clearly, with this additional funding, we will achieve great strides towards that by getting close to 15 or just over 15%. The next item is the FY22 capital budget. The budget totals $1,109,895, which included funds from Deeds Excise, Registry Tech Fund, and Wollaston and operating budget resources. So after you remove those separate capital funding resources, the amount that we would appropriate from this surplus for FY22 capital would be $894,300. Departments have been notified of the approved capital plan that the advisory board and the commissioners approved back in June, and they are actively working towards plans to expend these funds in FY22. The first benchmark for activity against this budget will be October 4th. They'll be providing quarterly updates to me throughout the fiscal year so I can monitor how they are spending against this number. In the event we encounter any kind of delays associated with projects or costs that deviate from the approved plan, we'll come before the advisory board for any transfers, hopefully well before the end of the fiscal year, to optimize these resources. And I think, as you all know, this particular item is the first time the county has presented a capital budget for separate funding use. And clearly, this is new ground for a lot of the department heads. We'll be working with them throughout the year to make sure they understand these guidelines. Next, number 4, the Abrahams Group has prepared a draft multi-year capital plan. For you folks that have followed the county commissioners meetings over the last several weeks, the Abrahams Group has delivered 2 of 3 various phases associated with their deliverable. The first phase was delivered in August, and it really focused on the financial procedures and financial tools that the county now has. It included a multi-year plan for capital improvement that frankly took out our needs, I think it was 10 years. So we're looking at funding what would be the FY23 budget from this surplus. And in that regard, we're looking to place approximately $1 million into a spending account, which will sit there until next spring when the advisory board will approve and the county commissioners approve the corresponding capital plan. I'll be working on that detailed plan sometime in October, for I believe I have to deliver that by the end of October for the county commissioners review. So again, you will get to the content of the plan later in fiscal year 22, but we're funding FY23 now with that surplus. The details. Now the part of the plan, if you will, that deals with supplemental needs, as Chairman Reardon indicated. Overall, the county budget is in very good shape as we enter the final phase of Q1. I'll be very quick and brief as I go through these bullets. We are looking to heavily invest in our security and technology within the county. The proposal includes funds to move our email system to Microsoft 365, purchase 2 new servers, purchase cloud service storage for our BudgetSense / Tyler Technologies product, which is the backbone of our financial systems, and time and attendance module. We're looking to purchase additional software for Visio, which is a software our human resources director will be using. We're looking to purchase $80,000 for asset management software program. Currently, the county does not have a dedicated system to track all assets. I understand we track gap assets, which are typically items over $50,000, but we would desire a program that tracks all assets, as well as places into the program the ability to track scheduled maintenance, warranties, replacements, and so forth. It's basically a facility management plan. And for a county with such rich facility resources, this program will be invaluable for us to manage these resources going forward. Finally, 614 High Street, which is where the commissioners are located. We will be doing upgrades to a card reader system, as well as outside camera monitoring of our property. So overall, the information technology pieces are modest, but I should say sorely needed. We'll move on to the Wollaston Golf Course. In this area, there are 3 items that were originally envisioned, as I understand it, for funding through a bond bill that eventually was used to fund the Superior Court Dome project. Unfortunately, when that project was bid, the total cost of the project basically consumed the balance of the bond, and the items, including the 3 walkway pieces you see now, were left unfunded. We're looking to restore that this evening by funding the replacement of these 3 walkways, which, if any of you folks have looked at them, are well beyond useful life and actually slightly perilous to use. Finally, the item that we've placed a stake in the ground, I'd like to say, at Wollaston is for a playground upgrade. The playground has not, in anyone's memory, been replaced or upgraded in many, many years. $100,000 may get us some improvements, but we do anticipate using this particular item as leverage for grants and or state relief. My assistant director, Bill Buckley, has been in touch with state legislators who represent the area that users from the Wollaston Golf Course come from. And the hope is that they'll understand the need to look at this through the lens of community improvement and matching the county's commitment to improving that portion of the golf course recreational area. The item that comes up next is the $40,000 item for legal services associated with the Registry of Deeds. For those individuals not on the previous call, the Register had previously requested a transfer to support some unanticipated legal services that he incurred throughout FY22. Madam Chairwoman, at this point, would you like me to express the outcome of your prior meeting, or would you like me to hold that for you to express at the end of my presentation?
Why don't you just keep going, John,
Okay.
and I'll get to it. I'll explain it when we get there.
You got it.
Okay.
The Norfolk County Agricultural High School is not requesting any supplemental funds, but on the form that will be endorsed by the chairman with your approval, it includes some simple transfers to move money from approved capital items to new items that the schools have deemed necessary. I think they are forgoing a pickup truck and a certain project for underground storage tank for a boiler project within the administrative building. Moving on. The remaining items within the supplemental include our maintenance division looking for $23,000 to complete steam traps within the Rentham and Dedham District Courts, as well as $100,000 associated with the Stoughton District Court project. Let me briefly describe this item. As many of you know, the Stoughton District Court was a funded item in the FY21 capital budget. That was $220,000. The total project was bid in March, I believe, and it was awarded. Between March and May, the project encountered some delays associated with sourcing materials, rooftop units that were inevitably delayed, as everyone knows, because of the supply stream of certain products associated with COVID. Consequently, the project really didn't get underway until June, when the vendor opened up the roof and recognized that the weight of the new units would likely encounter some issues with stability. We called in a structural engineer who examined it and indeed concluded that the project needed to stop. It needed to be re-examined, and subsequently a bid was forthcoming that showed, in order to rectify this shortcoming, it would cost about another $107,000. This change order exceeds our 32B, Chapter 32B guideline, and we are currently looking at a peer review outcome with a new mechanical engineer to come up with a new scope of work so that we may bid the item and get this project done, hopefully within the next 5 to 6 weeks. It's encountered substantial delays. Some of it was avoidable, but most of it is a victim of processes, including supply streams that I think most people in the facilities industries recognize right now as a problem. Our goal is to take this additional $100,000, couple it with the unspent money from the project, bid the project, and then allow the project to go forward under this new supplemental need. I want to point out one item. There is sufficient money in the FY21 encumbrance, which was carried over into FY22, to pay for this work if the current vendor received the bid. We cannot presume that that vendor's encumbrance will prevail in a public bid process. So consequently, we're asking for the fresh $100,000 to cover this item. And in the event that the existing or any vendor gets this, they'll be funded through this supplemental. The existing encumbrance, no matter what the outcome, will revert into FY22 surplus. I hope I've explained that with some clarity. There's a few moving pieces there, but happy to answer any questions down the road. The treasurer is looking for $10,000 in legal services. As you know, he was elected a year ago. He has spent some effort to understand the breadth and duties of his office. He's requesting funds to have a legal overview of his responsibilities and concerns and issues within his office. This is a modest amount to support that legal work. In addition, he's requiring 20 hours, not more than 20 hours per week, I should say, for administrative support to cover the needs of operational needs within his office. Engineering. We have a project again that was funded with FY21 approved capital. In this case, this item had been shelved, and when we engaged the local Conservation Commission, they began to examine this project with a little bit more scrutiny, and it caused some upcharges associated with the project. The Old River Place drainage is an area directly behind the district court, and it travels from county property over private property. We have an easement, and the drainage dumps back into a catchment beyond there. This item is an area that the town of Dedham has asked us repeatedly to address. It is not a water, it is not a sewer project, so we discussed internally whether or not it could qualify for ARPA. I'm afraid it does not. We are looking for funds here to simply close the costs that we project we'll need to complete this capital item. And then finally, the commissioner's office. We are looking for $15,000 to cover office furniture, that's chairs, file cabinets, and other office related items. Many folks who visit our office will notice we are the beneficiary of a lot of hand-me-downs. Many of the chairs and desks are beyond useful life. This is a modest request to update those. So the total ask on the supplemental need, Mr. Chairman, and your committee is $688,934. I will note as a footnote again, the $40,000 from the register would be drawn from deeds excise.
Chair Childs?
I get a couple more.
Oh, you have more.
A couple more. Taking a breath. Number 6, The county's carrying a large liability associated with other post-employment benefits, also known as OPEB. Members of the advisory board are probably familiar with this area. The county's taken some steps to begin addressing this liability, which as of June 20th, 2020, June of 2020, our GASB report indicated our total unfunded liability was $57,054,764. For those folks that are familiar with this type of dynamic, this is a chronic issue across Massachusetts. Many communities are struggling with this unfunded liability, which for generations remain unfunded. Recent bonding agencies and other auditors begin to spot this as an area that prompted communities and now County of Norfolk to essentially come up with a plan, show some commitment towards funding the liability. They recognize that in many cases, the liabilities are well beyond the reach of resolving with any reasonable time frame. They simply want to see a commitment towards the solution. And in this way, we're looking to double the amount that the county had committed in FY22 by putting an additional $200,000 towards this liability. And as you'll see, with that $200,000 plus the amounts that have been already committed, we will have removed just over $1 million, about $1 million from that liability within just over a year and several months. The next item is the supplemental for into the capital plan for FY22. This item kind of originated as a result of conversations with our securities company Hilltop. Our assistant our assistant treasurer Joe Dory and I, as well as Rick Fitzpatrick from the schools, have been in multiple calls with Hilltop related to the bonding and borrowing associated with the school's project. Over the last couple of months, recognizing that we had a large surplus, we engaged our advisors with some ideas to use this surplus to the benefit of the operating resources of the schools. One idea was to simply pay off $1 million or so of that debt and give relief on the operating account to the schools. It's not as simple as that. We have several short-term bond anticipatory notes and other bonds that have very favorable rates. As many of you know, right now is the time to do that as the rates are quite low. They did not recommend that we liquidate any of the existing bonds. We do have a bond that is looming that we're looking to get out probably in early January. And they recommend that at this point, we park the $1 million in a capital fund. Through this vote this evening, it would earmark that money for future relief associated with the plan. And we'll be speaking with the school trustees in the coming weeks or month to appeal to them to help resolve the school's structural deficiency, which, according to the Abrahams report, is rooted in an imbalance between tuition revenue and increased expenses associated with projects. We want to assist the schools towards this goal, and that means that we will hold the $1 million in abeyance until a plan from the schools develops that shows how they're going to achieve solvency, if you will, associated with this deficiency. It's likely that some amount of the $1 million will be put towards that put towards that plan in FY22. The balance of the $1 million will be also used for funding short-term supplemental needs, as Chairman Reardon said, through the next several quarters as we get further into FY22. So from a perspective involving planning, we thought that parking the $1 million was wise. It gives the schools a sense and the trustees of the schools a sense that we're here to assist, but we do need the cooperation to come up with a bona fide plan in order to enjoy any further relief from this particular account. For the board's benefit, through you, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to also cast an eye towards several FY22 observations. Here we sit at the end of September, the end of the first quarter. Fiscal year 22 has 9 months ahead of us, yet there are some things that I wanted to call your attention to so there are no surprises coming through the end of the fiscal year. Earlier, I mentioned that Dedham Superior Court Dome project is underway. They began that this past summer. The scaffolding is up. The work is underway. They will mothball that project sometime, probably around Thanksgiving, as weather conditions dictate, and then we'll revisit the project when the weather breaks, likely sometime in April. The Dome project is obviously a very tenuous project. They're dealing with a structure that is quite old, almost 200 years old, and right now the project has no contingency. We don't expect any overages or project change orders between now and December when your board meets again. But likely in the spring, we may encounter some changes and challenges. I just wanted to alert you in the event that that does surface, we'll be talking to you. Our Rentham boiler is 50 years old. It keeps chugging along. It is scheduled for our FY23 capital plan, but we are monitoring its performance to make sure we can get through this heating season in good shape and then place it into the 23 capital plan for replacement. We are looking for new asset software, as I mentioned, to help the county track maintenance schedules, warranty, and capital needs. This, to me, is a little hidden gem in what is proposed to you this evening as a real serious return on investment. If folks associated with this kind of software use it in their daily lives, especially in the public/schools environment, you'll understand what I'm talking about. The proper use of this technology can really benefit the operational and facility excellence that we're trying to achieve. Tracking this kind of information right now is a little bit beyond us, so the software is going to be a real big benefit to us. Briefly, the Quincy District Court. We've had numerous conversations with the state, the commissioners. We were approached by the state about a month ago as they move forward with the plan to purchase ultimately the Quincy District Court site. The commissioners approved DCAM, that's the Department of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance of the state, to begin a site assessment on their dime to evaluate the property for potential future purchase and sale. This particular event will probably take between 4 to 6 weeks. They have not started yet, so this will likely go into the second quarter. Once the site assessment is completed, the state claims it will return to us and begin talking with us about appraisals of the property. One of the items that is not currently funded is the county's obligation, we believe, to conduct our own appraisal, separate from and distinct from what the state will provide. This asset obviously has tremendous value. There's a lot going on in Quincy right now with respect to trying to keep the facility up to certain code and good condition, if you will. But we're looking at a window of perhaps between 1 to 3 years before we will need to vacate, or the courts will need to vacate that space and liquidate the property for the Commonwealth to use it for a future regional justice center. That's the design purpose. The Dedham District Court roof project will be bid this fall. Work will be done in the spring. Again, we'll monitor for any price changes as we bid against this approved capital item. We have to again be mindful that asphalt, shingles, and other supply stream issues could be impacted by the quote we sat on to approve this budget item in the first place. We'll let you know if we need more money. Transfers include movement of funds in several accounts to fund temporary salaries versus permanent salaries. You folks may have heard some comments regarding certain hires that the commissioners have approved in FY22. The commissioners determined that there were 2 areas, 2 of which the chairman just mentioned, facility maintenance and technology, in which the commissioners decided to hold those positions into a temporary full-time status pending the outcome of the Abrahams report. The Abrahams report in its totality and its use will be consumed by your board over the next 6 months in preparation for the FY23 budget. And as such, we thought that placing them in the temporary status was the most sensible approach. Consequently, the FY22 budget, which had the funds for these salaries parked in permanent, now needs to be transferred into temporary. So the form that the chairman will hopefully sign represents that transfer status. And then finally, the Abrahams report, as I mentioned, was delivered on September 22nd, and it did provide, I got a typo there, I apologize, and it provided extensive recommendations. We still have 2 more sections that they will present to us next week, October 6th. That will be the treasurer's office and the registrar's office. Following the receipt of those particular items in their totality, the commissioners will receive the product, and put it under advisement and begin sharing it widely for consideration of future action. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Chairman, for your opportunity to present the county's position on the supplemental and respective reserve funds.
Madam Chair, may I interject for a second? Mr. Buckley?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Are you in possession of the ability to recognize hands that are raised at this time?
I can, yes, sir.
Okay, if we could do that to the members to set the stage. Members certainly are welcome to ask questions. I would ask that you press the little raise your hand button on the Zoom. And Mr. Buckley will recognize you and we'll do it in order as they come in. And Bill's coming in now. So that we can have an orderly discussion about any of the issues that we'll be approaching. Prior to opening up for questions of the director's report, I would like to recognize the fact that Superintendent John Martin is with us on this meeting. This is his first meeting as superintendent of the Norfolk County Agricultural High School. And Superintendent Martin, we welcome you on behalf of the board. I extend our greetings and look forward to working with you. For Mr. Buckley to return.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have the gentleman from Braintree with his hand raised.
The gentleman from Braintree is recognized.
Mr. Ryan.
If he could unmute himself.
I'm sorry, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Apologize for that. I'm going to fully support this. I think we just, I'd like to see us put away as much money as we can when we have this windfall, so to speak, with the budget. I think it's very important to put money aside for a rainy day as much as we can. While it's good we're doing important things, I think we need to keep that in mind. So I'm going to support this fully. Thank you.
Are there any other questions of the director's report before we move into specific conversation around the supplemental appropriation?
Mr. Chairman, I can't, my raised hand doesn't work.
Mr. Polito, if you could, can you find it on the bottom of your screen?
I don't see it there. Nope.
So you cannot find it?
Nope.
Okay. Mr. Polito, you're recognized.
Thank you. Just some questions about the overall budget. I just on the technology information. I support it, but have we hired an IT person to make this recommendation to us, or how do we get this amount? What we need? Do we hire somebody with some expertise?
The director's recognized.
Good evening, Mr. Polito. The Norfolk County Commissioner's Office has a staff member, Mr. Mark McDonald, who's been our Chief Information Officer / Data Processing Manager for quite some time. He collaborated with us on these items.
Okay, thank you. Another question there. Another question on the items on the capital items you purchased. It says one of them. I know you need the furniture, which I have no problems you purchasing. But I was there in the office, I think, last week, and I saw a lot of new furniture there. Has the furniture been purchased yet?
No, sir.
So the new furniture we have in some offices now have not been purchased.
What new furniture?
Mr. Polito, I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? It broke up. I couldn't hear that.
I was there a few weeks ago and I saw a lot of new furniture there in the offices already.
There is no new furniture in the office.
Excuse me?
There is no new furniture in the office. There was one chair purchased at WB Mason approximately 2 months ago. That's the only new piece of furniture.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The other issue is on that $1 million for the school bailout. Did that come back in front of the advisory board in order to be expended?
I don't understand the question.
The $1 million you put aside for the Norfolk Aggie.
Yes, up to, yes, sir.
Okay, does that come back to this board, advisory board, to give it out to?
Yes, it would. Yes, it would.
It'll come back to us.
Yes, it would.
Okay. And okay, the only other question I have is in regards to the budget is the $40,000. Is that being discussed now or for the?
That'll be discussed specifically when we talk about the supplemental appropriation, Mr. Polito.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions, Mr. Buckley?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have Vice Chair Dr. Childs of Brookline and the Register.
Okay, so Register, are you looking to speak with regard to the supplemental appropriation or the director's report?
Good evening, everybody. Welcome, new members. Good evening, Mr. Chair. No, just on the registry when it's appropriate, when you allow me, just on the registry supplemental request that was approved by the county commissioners for the.
Okay. In deference to your elected position, of course, we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to go first. So Mr. Buckley, after Chair Childs, would you make sure that we recognize Registrar O'Donnell? You may have to remind me.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Chair Childs.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sharon. The Finance Committee met to discuss the supplemental appropriation requests 2 weeks ago. And the recommendation from the Finance Committee was that we approve the capital budget supplemental appropriation as presented. The recommendation was on the operating budget that we approve it with the request that we obtain more information about the request from the registry for the transfer of $40,000 from the deeds excise to an appropriation funded from the deeds excise fund 64D to the legal fees line item in the registrar's budget. The follow-up meeting to that was the executive committee meeting with Registrar O'Donnell yesterday. And that I'll report out on that, and the Finance Committee re-meeting this evening before this full advisory board meeting. After meeting with the Register yesterday, we learned that the Register had incurred a $27,000 expense for legal fees, which was invoiced to the registry in September. The request from the registry is for a supplemental appropriation for $40,000 to be funded from the deeds excise fund. Before we take up the specifics of that request, I'd like to set some context for our role in this particular request. We on the NCAB all together share in our obligation to be accountable checks and balances on the county's finances. In that role, the request is different than our usual supplemental appropriation requests. Usual requests are brought to us in anticipation of incurring a necessary expense that is not already funded, but that the department head is seeking funding for. This expense has already been incurred without the available funding. Stewardship of public funds and public fiscal oversight is that you do not expend money that has not been appropriated. In fact, it is in direct violation of sections 34 and 35, the statutory language for the county. With this particular expense, it's far be it for us to comment on the rightness of the expense itself, but we can and should comment on the way this request came to us. That's our duty in exercising our role as part of the financial controls of the county. It's not a punitive or a personal action. It is a responsibility and an obligation for us to decide how best to handle a request that has been, how best to handle an incurred expense that occurred outside of the statutory regulations. No department head, whether elected or appointed, should ever get the impression that the board that is charged by statute to be the fiscal check on county finances is simply a rubber stamp on expenditures. We cannot be a participant in violating the law. We are presented with a dilemma as the advisory board. The county is obligated to pay the $27,000 legal fees that have already been incurred. And it is essential that we as the advisory board not be a part or even be perceived as a part of, at best, shoddy financial practices and at worst, illegal or unethical practices. The Finance Committee, in considering this dilemma, recommends that we accept that we approve the supplemental appropriation operating budget as proposed, but deny the $40,000 request to transfer money from the deeds excise fund to the legal fees line item, and instead request that the register through a simple transfer approved by the county director, because he does have the money in his printing budget, utilize funds from that budget to fund his financial fees. The other piece that is important here is that it is not at all clear that there will not be more legal fees incurred. We did ask that question yesterday of the register, and he could not estimate for us or anticipate what legal fees might occur in the future. So I would also consider request, this was not part of the financial committee's recommendation, but I would consider the board making a clear statement that any future appropriations for legal fees be requested prior to incurring or encumbering those fees. So that would be a request of the board to consider as well. So the recommendation, Mr. Chairman, is that from the Finance Committee is that the supplemental appropriation for capital be moved and funded in full at the 1.378305 number, and that the supplemental appropriation for operating be funded at $1,769,838.94 without the $40,000 legal fees request from the registry. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to recognize the director just for one quick.
Bless you, whoever sneezed. With regard to the items that the chairwoman just explained, I just wanted to call your attention. As the advisory board will be examining this request, the total amounts are broken into two different forms. One's operating, one's capital. And what I'd like to do is just iterate a different number that you will see through your motion, which will mimic hopefully what the Finance Committee and the county commissioners had done. When the time comes, I'll be happy to give you those numbers. But I just wanted to articulate that the chairwoman mentioned numbers that may not be consistent with the forms. That's all.
Okay. So, Mr. Buckley,
Mr. Chairman,
we have Register O'Donnell, and then do we have other hands raised?
we do not at this time.
Okay, Register O'Donnell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and hello, members of the board. First of all, just by way of background, yes, a lawsuit was initiated by the registry. And again, it was to ensure that the technology and infrastructure at the registry remain safe, secure. And what prompted it was a vote on June 30th, a 2-to-1 vote not to appoint a permanent chief information officer, registry chief information officer, to replace the retiring chief information officer who was retiring on June 30th. The process to replace the chief information officer had started back in March. People were well aware of it. And again, I get asked, why file a lawsuit? Believe me, the whole registry CIO and registry IT department issue and the saga surrounding it, it has been disruptive to the registry. It's been disruptive to registry operations and management, and I would recognize it's, I believe, a needless distraction. It's a drain on staff time at the registry, monetary resources. But I didn't create the poor policy of not appointing a registry chief information officer that had been in existence. I've been here 20 years, and yes, this is unique. As Register of Deeds, I haven't had to sue anybody or anything like that. However, I do have a fiduciary responsibility and duty, given that the chief information officer wasn't filled, to protect registry operations, protect registry and homeowners records. And also there's a revenue stream. From July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021, that was fiscal year 21, the last fiscal year, we collected $81 million, but it was through technology. It was through, technology has driven the modernization initiatives at the registry. And where does that revenue stream go? A lot goes to the state, and I recognize the state.
Order, Register, point of order. We're speaking to the supplemental appropriation. There's no conversation about, we know where it came from. We know what preceded it. We'd just like you to speak kindly to the supplemental appropriation and the $40,000, please.
Sure, and I was just giving by way of background, there've been some statements made. The registry was left with no choice. No one gave the registry of deeds any notice that this was going to happen. As a matter of fact, the advisory board had approved the budget on.
Register. We are not talking about any sort of lawsuit here. We're talking about legal bills. We all understand what preceded this, but that is not the issue. Please stay to the issue.
Well, the issue is there was a lawsuit, unfortunately. The issue is the registry had to seek legal counsel. The issue, as I see it, is equal justice under the law. I haven't seen, yesterday at the meeting, as I said to the executive committee, they asked, have you gotten bills? I said, I'll gladly, send over the bills. We just got them in September. But I said, I hope you're asking for the same bills on these other county lawsuits that are going on. So the registry had to, and rightly so, pursue this matter, Mr. Chair and others. I recognize people don't want to talk about the lawsuit, but the registry is requesting monies to pay for legal bills. And as Director Cronin has said at other meetings, he was the one that suggested that I go in front of the advisory board. I didn't welcome this because, as I said to John, I said, oh, you like watching a train wreck, huh? And but here we are. The legal bills were incurred. It was an emergency action, and the registry didn't cause this emergency action. No one notified us that the chief information officer, which had been approved, was going to not be improved. It was just unprecedented. So even though it's unfortunate, I wish it didn't happen, I have a fiduciary duty, and that's what paying these legal bills is about. I had to seek counsel to pursue our claims in court. And, everyone else has attorneys, and the registry needed attorneys to pursue that. As far as notices, I mean, people had to have known this was going to happen because people took the position that the registry CIO, registry chief information officer, and again, we only have 2 people in this department, that the position wasn't going to be filled. So I didn't get any notice either that this was going to happen. I wish it didn't, and I hope it gets resolved. But legal bills were incurred, and I think it's unfortunate. But I've been running the registry for quite a bit. We try to run it professionally. We try to run it with good customer service, but we do take our job seriously. Can't take ourselves seriously, but we try to take the job we do seriously. And not having the court, I don't want to talk, you don't want me to talk about the lawsuit, but the lawsuit was done with the intentions of protecting registry records, protecting the registry operations, protecting in this era of cybersecurity risks to people's records and to this vast amount of money, $81 million that gets collected. The other thing I would point out that this $40,000 is from deeds excise money. One of the components of deeds excise, most goes to the state, a lot goes across the street to the county commissioners. The registry deeds money that we send to the treasurers every day, it's a share of that. We're not asking for county monies. We're using registry deeds excise money to pay for this $40,000. So again, reasonable people can disagree on the issue, I guess. But clearly, if the lawsuit wasn't brought, we wouldn't even have gotten a temporary chief information officer, which we have now. I look at it as equal access to the law, and I would appreciate the advisory board voting the monies because the bills are there. Had no problem sending the bills to the executive committee. And as I said yesterday, I just want to be treated the same. Have you asked other attorneys working for the county on the other side or in the other matters? There's a legal case in Walpole. There's a couple of legal cases out of Walpole. There's other legal matters being pursued. I've never seen this much attention being brought to the legal bills. I have no problems sending it. I sent it to the executive committee, but seeing that I did, now suddenly there's this move to not pay what's been incurred. And I'm just asking For the advisory board's consideration, I hope the matter gets resolved, but legal bills were incurred and we all had at the registry a good faith basis for pursuing that lawsuit. We had no choice. There was no, it happened and we had to do drastic steps to protect the registry operations. And I just ask your consideration of all the factors and recognize that the 40,000 is coming from the dedicated registry deeds excise monies that are over at the treasurer's office. And I know there's money there to pay that and use that. There's enough money in that account to pay $40,000. If anyone has any questions, I'll gladly try to answer them.
Mr. Buckley, thank you, Register. Mr. Buckley, do we have other hands raised?
Yes, sir, through you, Mr. Chair. The gentleman from Dedham, Mr. Polito, was first, and then the gentleman from Avon, Mr. Beckerman.
Just two?
Just two as of this moment.
Okay, so if I may register, I don't think there's any question, as Dr. Child said, about paying the bill. It's going to get paid. So there's not an issue there. The issue is where the money is going to come from and how you went about appropriating it. Is there any cause for you not to have abided by the law and submitted a request for a supplemental appropriation in an emergency basis prior to you actually hiring and paying the attorneys?
Well, let's give it some context, Mr. Chair.
That's a direct question, Register.
Well, the direct question is you opposed the chief information officer and we were left with no choice. In an ideal world, I wish it didn't happen, but we pursued our rights.
Specific question, would you please answer it? We know about the CIO. We know about the lawsuit. I'm asking you about the money. Is there a reason why you would not follow the law and that you would try and get through this process till now without telling the advisory board or the county, the commissioners, that you had already expended the money? You had already incurred that expense. Is there a reason why that happened?
I have been very open about this lawsuit. The registry has nothing to hide. We had to file the lawsuit. The lawsuit it happened June 30th. The lawsuit was filed July 14th. There was plenty notice to the county decision makers that there was a lawsuit. And it's ironic that a lot of the county decision makers, including yourself, Mr. Chairman, who have had a role in why the registry had to do it, now suddenly, is looking and raising these hurdles. Listen, I hope it never happens again. But bottom line is the registry of deeds. The registry and my staff is tasked with making sure people's titles are correct when documents get recorded. We recorded over $205,000.
Register,
205,000
Register,
documents.
Please. Register, you're out of order once again. I asked you a direct question. If you have an answer, please articulate it. If you don't, I know Mr. Polito and Mr. Beckman are waiting. Did you or did you not know that you were violating the law when you did not ask for a supplemental appropriation in anticipation of incurring these expenses?
The position was approved by this advisory board. It was a funded position that's been in existence 20 years.
You're out
The
of order
registry
again.
acted on a decision and we would do it
Register, you
again
are
to
out of
protect.
order. You are out of order. It's a yes or no question. I'm asking you a direct question. Were you aware, did you know that you were violating the law and not asking for the supplemental appropriation before you incurred the expenses? It's a yes or no question.
The registry pursued a case. And
Correct.
anyone that knows, it was an emergency basis to protect registry records, to protect registry revenues that come in, $81 million. I don't just have a fiduciary duty to the county. I have a fiduciary duty to the Department of Revenue and to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to make sure not only that the records are preserved, but that the revenue stream is preserved, especially with cybersecurity risk going on, and that it was a reckless and unsound decision not to have a registry chief information officer. And we pursued a court action to redress that.
Redundancy. Okay, we're going to move on. Mr. Polito.
Yeah, thank you. What is in front of us now. Is there a motion to pay the 27,000? I'm a little confused here now.
No, there's no motion. The finance committee made a report. We're taking questions and no motion has been made as of yet.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Just go back a little bit to the operating budget, if you second, in regards to that, the change of class from temporary to permanent. Can I discuss that now, or that's something different?
It's about the supplemental appropriation. Is that about that? No, that's not the supplemental. That should do.
It's part of the transfer documentation.
Oh,
It's
that's
inside.
right. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Polito.
Thank you. I think this started back last year. And to me, it's people don't like it. To me, it's politics at its worst. I think some members there, I know the chairman now had a big talk to the advisory board last year, stood up in front like a lawyer, criticizing Richard Deeds about his work in previous years. So I think this is all politics from before. I think it's a control issue by the advisory board, by the finance committee in 2 out of 3 commissioners. I think that's the bottom line. You want control what's going on over there. You're trying to take a little more power away from the Richard Deeds. So I think, do I like the lawsuit? Not at all, but it should never come to that point. The money was budgeted. I think it's games being played over on High Street about all what's going on. I got some discussion later on the open meeting, open discussion about some issues. I'm bringing up then too. But he presented thing to Richard Deeds to $40,000 from dedicated Deeds excise tax. I'd like to put that on the table to move the $40,000 from Deeds excise tax to legal fees to help Mr. O'Donnell. The problem is we should never been in. We should never been in. The report from the Abraham's group has done nothing yet. They didn't meet with us until way after this was done. And I'll address that later on in my comments about the Abrams report.
Mr. Polito, are you making a motion?
So I make a motion to take $40,000 from Deeds excise tax of $40,000 and move it to legal fees as sent over and something in the budget that we all have in hand.
Okay, so Mr. Polito, I believe what you would be doing would be voting to approve the supplemental appropriation as presented. Dr.
That's how
Childs was removing the $40,000 from that.
Yes.
So you were doing it as presented.
Yes, that's
Okay.
how it reads, yes.
Okay, using through Mr. Buckley, someone to raise their hand. Is anyone willing to second that, please?
Helen,
Mr. Chair, the
Helen
gentleman
is
from
doing it.
Norfolk.
Helen, can you see the little hand button at the bottom there?
Which one?
It'd be at the
I'm
bottom.
sorry, I'm not good at this.
I'm
Okay.
telling you, it's under reactions.
I don't know, I just do it. I don't know these. If I
That's
touch
okay,
something,
Helen.
the whole thing's gonna go berserk.
No worries. No worries. Okay, so the motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion about it?
Mr. Chairman, I had a question.
Mr. Walsh, you're recognized.
Thank
Can
you.
you find the hand button?
I had it raised, yes.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Question for you, and I don't know the answer, and that's why I'm asking the question. Are legal fees subject to procurement?
No, they are not.
They're exempt under 30B.
Thank you.
Okay.
Architects, lawyers, and engineers, no, yeah.
Mr. Chair, the gentleman from Walpole.
The gentleman from Walpole, I cannot see you.
Mr. Davish.
Yes,
Davis, are
Mr.
you
Chair.
there?
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Chair. So if this secondary, this new motion not pass, how does this $27,000 get paid?
The recommendation was the current.
If the supplemental budget. I'm sorry, go on.
That's okay. The recommendation from the Finance Committee through Chair Childs was to refer it back that the register request a transfer from the printing and binding line item through the director to pay for the legal bills.
So it sounds like it's gonna get paid either way, is what I'm hearing. So,
Correct, it has to, it has to. But I
Yeah,
think,
so I guess, I know there's a substantive motion out there. Legally, which is the preferable method? Just for Norfolk County?
I am not an attorney, but I'd refer it back to Chair Childs, who's done a significant amount of work in determining the legality of all of this.
I would say that if we voted as an advisory board to do a supplemental budget appropriation, it is going along with an initially unethical and illegal request. If it is done through a transfer, we do not vote on that transfer. That transfer is done within the registrar's budget, and the county director can authorize that without a vote. So I think part of it is whether or not we want to vote to do something that we know was an illegal request, and illegally expended and incurred expenses.
Thank you, Doctor. Mr. Davis, does that answer your question?
Yes, I understand it now. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think we forgot the clerk of the committee, the gentleman from Avon, and then I have the register and the gentleman from Franklin, Mr. Padula.
Mr. Beckerman, my executive committee and finance committee colleague, I apologize.
That's right. I've been ignored by different people before. I actually have two questions, and they're both through you, Chair Reardon, to the registrar. Basically, the two questions I have is, number one is, I agree that this was unforeseen. This was an unforeseeable and an unfortunate situation. However, in the June 3rd meeting of the combined meeting between the finance committee and the county commissioners, when this issue was discussed about a potential freeze of hiring, the commissioners brought up the fact that we were in the middle of hiring a county director and a superintendent, which they said were very important positions. And we all agreed that those positions should go forward. My first question to the registrar would be, why wasn't this position brought up at that time? Because speaking as the representative from Avon, not a member of the finance committee, I would have been completely in favor of adding the CIO as part of those two positions, because I agree it's a very important position. But I'm a little confused on why it wasn't brought up at that time. And that kind of put us in this position. And I believe Registrar O'Donnell, you were at that meeting, or a representative of the registry was at that meeting. So my first question would be why that didn't happen. My second question is very simple. Are you in agreement that we all know this bill has to be paid? Whether the original request that you made of the county director was to transfer the money from the printing account. We are simply saying we are not necessarily in favor of doing a supplemental out of the registry deeds excise, but we want to go back to your original request. Are you okay with that, with going back to your original request? Those are my two questions for you, sir. Thank you.
Still, you're recognized.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chair, I didn't hear.
You're recognized.
Okay, thank you, thank you. To the first question, the June 2nd meeting was a very difficult meeting to kind of sit and understand. There were a lot of people on it. As a matter of fact, that meeting is a subject matter of the Attorney General is investigating it as far as an open meeting violation, that there was no notice of a hiring freeze. I do remember, Eric, your first comment was if the positions were funded, they should be filled. We were still in the process of interviewing. We had over 30 something resumes we went through. We got it down to about 6 people. We had 2 interviews. So we were still interviewing people to hire it. So yes, I agree. Because if you remember at that meeting, the initial motion was to do a freeze. And then I believe somebody pointed out, well, if we do that, we can't even hire Mr. Cronin or the superintendent or other people.
It's not true.
The motion that, and again, it was very confusing because it was a joint meeting of what was going on there. I do remember that there was a motion that essential positions would be hired. Again, I would say that the registry chief information officer is an essential position. I mean, would you agree with that, Mr. Beckerman? I don't think there's
I
any.
don't, Bill, I don't disagree with your,
Oh,
with your
okay.
assessment of that.
Yeah.
What I'm asking though is, at the time of the conversation was the commissioners had made a comment to the joint meeting that those two positions were already in process of being hired, and we should move forward with those two very important positions. However, freeze other positions in anticipation of the Abraham's report. My question is, why didn't somebody from the registry at that point say, wait a minute, I have an important position that needs to be considered in this situation as well? I think if that had happened, I don't think we'd be talking about this. I don't think there would be a lawsuit. I don't think we'd be talking about the 40,000. I think this whole, we wouldn't even be talking about the situation at all if somebody, whether it was yourself or somebody representing the registry, had raised their hand at that point and said, I am in the process of hiring a very important position in my department as well. It needs to be considered to go forward. Because specific positions were being discussed. That's all I'm asking.
Right, and we were moving forward on hiring it, but the motion said that essential positions would be hired. If you remember, there was also a date. I believe the chair of the finance committee wanted an indefinite date of hiring freeze, but what came out of it, and again, there was a lot going on because it was a joint meeting between the finance committee and the commissioners, that I believe, and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, it went to July 1st, the hiring freeze for non-essential people. Is that correct?
I would have to look back at my notes, but I believe that sounds accurate.
So if the registry chief information officer is an essential position, and for everyone out there, Governor Baker during COVID, and remember, we were open every day. We didn't miss one day during COVID collecting all that money, deemed the registry workers essential workers and essential services. That being said, and I'm not begrudging the Aggie School, but after that vote of the county director and also the superintendent, there was a vote down at the Aggie School to hire someone that they deemed essential, and I think it should have been hired. I'm just asking, why didn't the registry get treated the same? So after that vote, Eric, there were other hires made, and based on the motion, they said that an essential position was, would be exempt. The registry chief information officer is an essential position, but more importantly, the effective date of the chief information officer was after June 30th. The person retired on June 30th, and the new chief information officer was going to start after June 30th. So by either term of that motion, it should have been signed. The paper should have been signed. So I'm not so sure that, hindsight's 20/20. You're right. Maybe it would have gone better, but the registry was told that essential positions would still be hired. So the registry CIO is an essential position, and we had not finalized the candidate yet. And more importantly, even if you don't deem the registry chief information officer essential, the hiring freeze went to June 30th to July 1st. So the paper should have been signed. I agree with what John Cronin said. The budget doesn't support, the printing budget is going to be short. So, John Cronin suggested this course of action. Hey, your budget's going to be short down the end of the line. So just go for it, with the advisory board. So at this point, the budget will be short in the printing. As a matter of fact, we had to ask for printing monies at the end of last fiscal year. So I would just appreciate the monies are there. The deeds excise money is there. In that the 40,000 come out of registry deeds excise money, not under any county monies. It's under the registry deeds excise money.
Mr. Beckerman, does that satisfy your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Buckley, I forgot.
Through Through Mr. Chair, the gentleman from Franklin and then the gentleman from Braintree.
Attorney Padula.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we should be talking about, without saying whether it's right or wrong, $27,000, not $40,000, because that apparently is what's been expended to this point. So if there's some amount that's more than that, then the registrar could go ahead and use a different process to have access to that money. It certainly puts the registrar in an interesting position to be seeking funds and approval for a course of action that may be in direct conflict or against the people he might be in front of. I find that to be very interesting in a position I never thought I'd see anybody in the group that I've been involved with for quite a while. As far as the legal opinion goes, I don't practice in this area of law and I have not reviewed the statutes, although I would and I will. I just want to make sure we're getting the advice on how this piece works. So that those are my two comments. Now my two questions are, who again gave us the opinion on this piece? And can someone drill down, because I'm just not that sharp, on why this type of expenditure itself that was done in advance is something that is inappropriate and or possibly illegal? But could someone give me those answers, please?
Dr. Childs?
I can certainly speak to the statute. It clearly requires that you not expend or encumber expenses that are not appropriated. And these were expenses that were encumbered and incurred without appropriation. The issue for us as a board and the finance committee the finance committee voted unanimously to move the operating and the capital budgets as presented, except for it also voted unanimously to not do that with the $40,000, because there is a way to manage that $40,000 and pay the bill, the $27,000 bill, from the existing line items within the registry budget. And then we might have a supplemental request for the printing budget later on, but we could decide if we think that's the right thing to do to backfill that or not. So that it leaves the Norfolk County Advisory Board an opportunity to decide what's the right thing to do there. We really did not make any opinion about there was no comment, no discussion really about whether or not the correctness of the legal fees cost. That was not part of our conversation because it's not really material. What's really material is how we're going to meet this financial obligation and whether or not it should come from a transfer within the registry budget at this point in the year, or whether or not it should come from an appropriation that we vote to support.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
So I still want to read the statute to make my own decision on where this thing lies.
Attorney Padula, I have that here if you'd like me to.
What's the statute, please?
It's chapter 35. You can, are you in front of your computer?
I'll jot it down.
It's section 28B. Uh-oh. Oh, okay. Oh, there it is right there. You can see it on the screen.
Yeah, so I'll bring it up myself so I can get a look at it but say this in fact is something that's inappropriate. Why are we involved with it at all? If I have a client that does something that's not appropriate, I'm either going to pay it or I'm not going to pay it. So I'm a little confused.
Yes, pay the obligation. Well, we have to pay the obligation.
Okay.
It's a matter of how we pay it. The issue around the supplemental appropriation is the fact that, I can read it, just this part here. This is chapter 35, section 28B, subsection G. And the salient point of this is no expenses may be incurred in excess of those shown in the approved budget. And in section 34, no new or unusual expense shall be incurred or permanent contract made or salary increased until an appropriation sufficient, therefore, has been made by the advisory board on county expenditures.
All right, thank you. I'll review the statute too, but thank you for reading that to me.
Thanks, Peter. I'm sorry, was it Mr. Ryan was next?
Mr. Chair, the gentleman from Braintree and the select board member from Cohasset, new member.
Okay. Mr. Ryan.
I lowered my hand. I do not have a point. Thank you.
Our new colleague from Cohasset, welcome.
Hi, it's nice to meet you all.
Nice to see you.
Hi. So I'm brand new. This is my first meeting, but I did have just a question to make sure that we were level setting and I was understanding the process correctly. I would presume that the county is defending itself with respect to this lawsuit, including hiring lawyers itself in response to this unanticipated lawsuit. And so have we gotten approval ahead of time for those legal fees that presumably we, or I should say that whoever the specific defendant is in the lawsuit, are we,
Sure.
are we doing the same that is being expected of the registrar?
We actually discussed this at the executive committee meeting briefly, but the director has all the information and share with you.
Thank you. The county budget contains a $90,000 line item for legal services. The county has a legal counsel associated with that service under contract. When this particular lawsuit emerged, we began utilizing the resources against that appropriation. Right now, there are sufficient funds in that appropriation to get us through at least the next 3 to 6 months. Likely before the end of the fiscal year, depending upon how things trend, we may come back and ask the advisory board and finance committee for additional resources to close FY22. But right now, we do not need any sufficient funds to cover those expenses because we're using the FY22 appropriation. In the case.
And just one follow-up question. Thank you for that. Would this appropriation also extend to the legal expenses incurred by the registrar?
No, it's a different department. And just real quickly, Mr. Poole, the registry has a similar appropriation. The amount of it is substantially less. In FY22, the register was appropriated $7,000 for the whole year. And he has consumed $27,000 of that obligation. Thus, he's deficient $20,000 as of today.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
Thank you and welcome. Mr. Buckley?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have no further raised hands.
Okay, so the motion on the floor made by Mr. Polito and seconded by Mrs. Donahue is that the recommendation, I'm sorry, that's incorrect, that the supplemental appropriation as presented from the commissioners be adopted and approved. And hearing, and is there any other discussion? Okay.
Just briefly, just to your point, you just made the remark. The commissioners approved of the full budget for the advisory board's consideration. The commissioners did not delve into the matter involving the registry because we are involved in litigation. We did not want to take a position on approving or disapproving it implicitly or explicitly. We passed it along to the advisory board for your consideration. So I guess Commissioner Collins has made public remarks to this point before, and I just wanted to pass that along. The commissioner's vote was simply to move it towards your realm for approval. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, yes. Mr. Beckerman, are you prepared for a roll call?
Mr. Chairman,
Who's speaking, please? I can't see.
Michael from Medway.
Oh, Mr. Boynton, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, through you, do I understand it correctly, the lawsuit is still pending?
Yes, it is.
I thought we got.
No, we have.
No, we received a judgment on July 27th from Judge Wilson, Michael, that basically ruled that the immediate injunction that was sought by the register was denied. However, the lawsuit still is open. I'm not an attorney, so I can't speak to the status, but we understand that the immediate relief that was sought by the register was denied by the judge, yet the motion still carries forward. If the register would wish to expand upon that condition, I would appreciate it. Again, I'm not an attorney.
Register, you're recognized.
Thank you. Judge Wilson, because the day before the commissioners hired a temporary CIO, ended up saying there was no irreparable harm because it was approved for a 1-year temporary thing. Now, it begs the question, the issue for the court to decide down the line is the whole arbitrary and capricious nature of the decision.
Through you, Mr.
That's
Chairman.
not here, but
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
it was,
I don't want to hear the whole thing again. I really
Thank
don't.
you, Mr. Boynton.
I'm not here to do it. It was the injunction that because there was a decision made by the commissioners to give to hire the person temporary for up to 1 year to June 30th. That's where we are there. That was the decision. So the judge indicated because of that decision, the irreparable harm, has kind of gone away because at least you got someone in there. Begs the other questions, but yes.
So I think the question from Mr. Boynton, though, Register, was, is this still an active lawsuit? Am I correct, Mr. Boynton?
That's correct. I believe, I'm hearing the answer is yes.
Yes, it hasn't been dismissed. Yes.
And does the registrar have an intent of withdrawing or ending the legal action against the county?
Register?
The register and the registry deeds, and on behalf of the voters of Norfolk County and the residents, seeks to have a registry chief information officer, which has been in existence for 20 years at the registry, working with registry staff, working with registry stakeholders, working with the general public. We wanted that person on site in a permanent registry chief information officer, as the whole registry IT department that has had 2 people in this for years. We want to keep that here. So
I'll take
you
that.
tell me
yes.
today that's what we have, then the case
So-
is dismissed.
Register, so the suit is still open, and you are asking for an appropriation of $40,000 for a $27,000 encumbrance. Is that correct?
A $27,000, I believe the last bill was through August.
But you're asking for 40 for future use.
Well, I don't know about future use. If I don't use it, it goes back to the county, but I hope I don't have to use it. I hope we get a resolution of this. I think it would be pretty simple. Just allow a permanent on-site registry chief information officer to be here and have his registry staff, the registry IT department be here. But, that's down the line. That's really not the issue tonight.
So and back to the original
Mr.
point,
Chairman,
this is about the money. I'm sorry, Mr. Boynton.
Let me continue if I can, and I apologize. I know you wanted to get to a vote on this, but
No, please go ahead, Mr. Boynton.
I've heard it mentioned several times tonight that the registry deeds excise is the registry's deeds excise. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, that is part of the revenue stream for the county. So in a context of it, the money that's being sought would supplement the appropriated budget, the FY22 appropriation for the registry's budget, coming from, for lack of a better description, the free cash, if you will, of the county. Is that a fair way to put it?
Well,
No, that's not fair.
Register, you're not recognized. The way that it's presented, Mike, is that it's a split, and the register can hold money for the operations, improvements, and infrastructure of registry. However, it still has to come through the advisory board. And if you recall from previous meetings, in particular 2 years ago, there has been an issue around accumulation of funds in that account. And, when the register said that there's plenty of money to take out of that account and put towards the $40,000, he's correct, because there is an excess of $4 million in that account that needs to be looked at. So I think that may answer your question. I'm not sure.
It does, and I apologize again for the delay on this. The understanding, the expectation that I have, again, operating kind of in a municipal world, so to speak, is that each of my departments are all presented with a budget and they're expected to live within the appropriated budget for that fiscal year. We are essentially the town meeting, if you will, or in the situation of cities, the council form to approve expenditures over and above. What's being sought is a sum of money over and above that which was otherwise appropriated to the registrar, to the register, and to the registry of deeds for this process. I'm simply going to speak against the motion, and I will vote against it.
Okay, thank you. Is there any more discussion before we move to a
Mr.
vote?
Chair, the gentleman from Franklin has raised his hand.
Mr. Padula.
Could someone just make it clear the exact number that I'm voting on? Because I'm not clear of that number. Usually when these motions are presented, say this is the supplemental amount. Can someone tell me what the figure is, please?
The total or the specific to the registry?
Oh, no, the total. I know the registry number is 40, and it's my understanding that the recommendation is going to be that it's going to be advanced without that. So what's the exact number that I'll be voting on, please?
We have it right here. If you could bear with us for 1 second.
Mr. Padula, as I mentioned earlier, when the board is ready for a motion on the request for these funds, they'll come in two forms, operating capital. Regarding request for operating, the current amount is $1,809,838.94. If the $40,000 for the registrar's request is excluded or not supported, the motion would then be adjusted down to $1,769,838.94. Sir, would you like the amount for the capital piece at this time?
No, if it's going to be brought up again, no, I don't need it a second time.
I've not mentioned the capital piece yet.
Well, please do that.
The capital total appropriation on the capital transfer that we would be seeking a motion for would total $1,378,305.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Buckley?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the gentleman from Weymouth has raised his hand, and
Oh.
the clerk may wish to record him as being present as well.
Mr. Papp, are you present?
I am, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry. I had called in, not through Zoom, so maybe my roll call vote was not recorded, but I just had one thing that I wanted to mention through you if I could. And that's just, I appreciate the clarity from the Finance Committee Chair's remarks regarding the, illegality of everything. I would just ask and perhaps humbly suggest going forward that in future situations when there are deliberations about hiring of essential personnel, that we just reach out to various department heads and say, hey, is there any changes that need to be made? And I understand that that's a can of worms, so I get that, but perhaps that would be helpful in the future from a process perspective to prevent some of the confusion that has occurred. So thank you for that, and I appreciate you recognizing me.
Thank you, Mr. Papp. Mr. Buckley?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have no hands raised at this time.
Okay, Mr. Beckham, are you prepared for a vote?
I am.
Okay, members, again, this vote is to approve the supplemental appropriation as presented by the commissioners, which includes the $40,000 appropriation to the registry for legal services. Mr. Beckerman?
Okay, Avon votes nay. Bellingham? Braintree?
No.
Brookline?
No.
Canton?
No.
Cohasset?
Aye.
Dedham? Dedham?
I think you're muted.
You're muted, Mr. Polito.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Dover? Foxborough?
No.
Franklin?
No.
Holbrook? Medfield? Medway?
No.
Millis? Milton?
No.
Needham? Norfolk?
No.
Norwood? Oh, was that
Norwood,
Norfolk?
yes.
I'm sorry.
Let me go back to Norfolk. Did somebody answer for Norfolk?
Norfolk, no.
Okay, thank you. Norwood, you said
Yes.
yes? Helen?
Yes.
Okay. Plainville? Is Carl still on?
Yep.
Oh,
That's a no.
okay. Quincy?
No.
Randolph?
No.
Sharon?
No.
Stoughton? Walpole?
No.
Wellesley?
No.
Westwood?
No.
Weymouth?
Yes.
Rentham? That's the roll. Phil?
We have yes 14.47, and no, 67.74.
Thank you to the clerk. The discussion was about a recommendation from the Finance Committee. Is there a motion to put forward the recommendation of the Finance Committee?
This is Braintree, so moved.
Second from Westwood.
Mr. Ryan and Mr. Walsh. Is there any discussion about this motion? Hearing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
So, Mr. Chairman, just as a point of order, so this is a vote on the supplemental that does not include the 40,000 transfer from the register for the.
My recommendation, it's the motion as recommended by the Finance Committee is my motion.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. I just wanted to make sure it was clear.
I could clarify the number on that if people would like that. Would people like to know the number? It's 1,769,838.94.
Eric?
Okay, so we'll call the roll. Yes.
Eric, this is Phil. Can you just give me a minute while I set up another couple columns here on this?
Sure, I'll fill anything for you.
Oh, shit. All right. I'll give you the high side. Just give me 1 minute. Thank you.
All right.
So he's gonna bring it into us and not pay.
Out of his own budget.
He's fine. Right, this is,
That's fine, yes. Yeah. So, that shocks me. Yeah.
Okay, all set. Thank you, Eric.
No problem, Phil. Thank you. All right, so we'll call the roll. Avon votes aye. Bellingham. Braintree.
Yes.
Brookline.
Aye.
Canton.
Yes.
Cohasset.
Aye.
Dedham.
No.
Dover. Foxborough.
Yes.
Franklin.
Yes.
Holbrook. Medfield. Medway.
Yes.
Millis. Milton.
Yes.
Needham. Norfolk.
Yes.
Norwood.
No.
Plainville.
Yes.
Quincy.
yes.
Randolph.
Yes.
Sharon.
Yes.
Stoughton. Walpole.
Yes.
Wellesley.
Yes.
Westwood.
Yes.
Weymouth.
Yes.
Rentham.
It's the
That completes it,
I am
Phil.
75.13 yes, 12.45 no.
Thank you. The appropriation is approved as amended. The next item is the supplemental appropriation for capital items. And Director, do you wish to?
So as earlier stated, Mr. Chairman, this total for the capital transfer will be $1,378,305.
Chair Childs, do you have a recommendation from the Finance Committee, please?
Finance Committee voted unanimously to recommend approval of this supplemental request as proposed by the county director and the commissioners.
Are there any questions with regard to this? Or is there a motion to place on the floor?
Mr. Chair,
Braintree,
make a
motion to approve as recommended by the Finance Committee.
Second.
Second.
Wow, I have no idea who did that.
That was Sean.
Charlie, I know, but
Mr. Chair, it was gentleman from Braintree, gentleman from Medway.
thank you very much. Is there any discussion about the motion?
Just one general comment through you. Well done to the county administration for putting this together and getting this before us.
Thank you.
Nicely noted. Is there any other discussion, Mr. Padula?
No discussion. Thank you.
Okay. I saw your light came on, if you will. Hearing no discussion, I would ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Bill, you all set?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay. Avon votes aye. Bellingham. Braintree,
Aye.
Brookline,
Aye.
Canton,
Aye.
Cohasset,
Aye.
Dedham,
Aye.
Dover, Foxborough,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yes.
Holbrook, Medfield, Medway,
Yes.
Millis, Milton,
Yes.
Needham, Norfolk,
Yes.
Norwood,
Yes.
Plainville,
Yes.
Quincy,
Yes.
Randolph,
Yes.
Sharon. You're muted, Ed.
Yes.
There you go.
Thank
Stoughton, Walpole,
Yes.
Wellesley,
Yes.
Westwood,
Yes.
Weymouth,
Yes.
and Rentham. Bill?
That's unanimous.
Excellent. So the supplemental appropriation has been approved. The motion is consistent with the one that was presented by the commissioners. A lot of our communities have been asking about this next item, the American Rescue Plan Act program called ARPA. It's taking so long, it sounds more like AARP, but it's finally here. And the commissioners and the director have been doing yeoman's work, lots of hours put into this. And it is truly going to be a boon, in my opinion, for the county as well as for our community. So Director, if you wish to share where we are with that.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Recognizing the late hour, I'll be as brief as I can to allow for any questions. The county accepted the $137 million distribution of the American Rescue Plan Act earlier this summer. We had received approximately, exactly, I should say, 50% tranche around that time, which has been deposited in the Treasury. We expect the other half next year. Immediately following that, the county engaged with Bristol County and Plymouth County to form a tri-county group, working primarily with Plymouth County, who had sponsored a plan to hire a CPA firm, two CPA firms, and a new legal firm to help create a portal for agencies to use to submit their applications. As many of you know from our town hall meeting back in August, the process included ultimately the selection of Clifton Larson Allen as the primary CPA firm developing the electronic portal. Powers and Sullivan is the secondary backup to reviewing all the applications. And finally, Mintz Levin Law Firm to review the legal side of all conformance and conformity, I should say, with this federal grant. Over the last several weeks, the counties meet weekly virtually. I'm happy to report that a fourth county has joined the mix. That would be Barnstable County. We will be sharing the costs with all four counties at this point for the front end costs, the one-time costs associated with the development of the portal and a cost associated with the legal agreements and so forth. What I provided to you is a very, very, very draft model. There's so much we don't know, but I believe in trying to put some thought to a spreadsheet here. Many of you know that we initially tried to suggest funding this program with interest. That would be woefully inadequate to cover the expected cost to support this program. So we advanced and generally and widely, most communities endorsed the idea that charging 2.5% for the administration would be adequate, while the county would hold back 0.5%, that's 0.5% for resources associated with county projects. I want to add that that $685,000 is less than the amount going to the smallest ARPA grantor in our county. So Norfolk County, by and large, will be, as I mentioned, sharing costs, and this model shows it as a tri-county share. But over the next 2 to 3 years, we expect some degree of expenditures, primarily in year one as the program gets up and running. We'll be using Clifton Larson as an advisor to help each of your communities understand what's eligible, what's not, how to get your applications in, how to fix them in court in the event that they're out of order. Mintz Levin has developed an exquisite upfront agreement that each community will be asked to sign only once in order to use the portal. I wanted to give you a quick update that Plymouth County is going live on the portal starting Friday, October 1st. We expect to be the second county in line to open our portal, and we're currently targeting within the first 2 weeks of October. Mr. Buckley has been reaching out to your communities over the last couple of weeks to collect the names of the ARPA coordinators, because we're going to be doing some onboarding over the next several days to make sure we collect the names of not only your ARPA coordinators, but your primary and financial sign-off signatories. These individuals will be the individuals be responsible for submitting the applications and ultimately for points of contact for any clarification. At this point, we're hoping that the portal, which has been beta tested this week, will be ready for use. We've seen models of it. If time permits, I hope to have another mini town hall with all of the ARPA users within Norfolk County, as well as Clifton Larson and our partners, to make sure you understand and see this portal before you actually use it, on how easy it is to get in, submit your application, and then watch it go through the process. Your individual profile will allow you to go into the portal to see the progress of its application all the way through to approval. Optimally, we would hope that most applications could see turnarounds as quick as 1 week, perhaps longer in the beginning due to the overwhelming amount. One item that we still have to resolve is how much money we will be looking to move out initially. You may recall when I did the town hall a little over a month ago, we wanted to let folks know that we're going to try to allot the money up front so that we don't go through all of it so fast. We have 3 years ahead of us. There's a lot of unknowns associated with the pandemic. We want to make sure that the resources are available for all the communities throughout that 3-year period. One of the items that's important to recognize is that if there are any communities that are likely to encounter the full need of their appropriation as per the 2019 census, they need to let us know that. I know there's one person on this call tonight who already has that locked up. He has a project that's pretty much a ready-made shovel-ready project for a water treatment plant, and he needs his full tranche. Those are the kinds of exceptions that we're going to be presenting to the county commissioners for an override against that allotment process. We want to be flexible, but we also want to be true to make sure that this process adheres to the federal interim rule guidelines and keeps us all well protected against any problems. We're excited when we saw this portal. All the counties are enthusiastic about its use. We think for the low value of what we're expected to charge for administration, as Chairman Reardon said, the county is finally delivering in a way that is historic. We'll be moving quite a lot of money over a very short period of time, engaging you actively to ensure that the full benefit of these funds through the county commissioners to your communities are realized without delay. I'll be happy to answer any questions on the profile of what I presented, Mr. Chairman. Given the late hour, I didn't want to belabor anybody, but again, it's just a draft at this point.
If members have any questions? Mr. Buckley, do you have anybody?
Through Mr. Chair, we have the gentleman from Braintree and the select board member from Cohasset in that order.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Gentleman
you.
from Braintree.
I would like to request that someone from the county come before a Braintree Town Council meeting to give a brief update on this. It will not only let everybody and all the stakeholders know about it, but it would let the word get out to the residents of Braintree as well. So I would request that if you could come to one of our meetings pretty soon, would be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Mr. Ryan, I just want to recognize Chair Shea from the commissioners to respond to your request.
I'm sure we'd be happy to come to any meeting you invite us to. Mr. Ryan, I will tell you that after our original meeting, when we had 78 of you and your colleagues on the call, when John first presented this, that day in particular, and one other time, I have spoke to the mayor, and between the mayor and the council, we'd be happy to come to any meeting you invite us to.
Thank you. The gentleperson from Cohasset is recognized.
Thank you. a quick question, and I'm not sure if this is better addressed during the town hall, and I'm happy to ask it then, but I should say, are there reporting requirements, including outcomes and other specific data and interim reports and final reports that often are collected in the context of federal money? And will the portal be handling that? And are there specific instructions, et cetera, as we think about how to prepare?
Director?
Excellent question. The answer is yes, yes, and yes. The portal does provide for guidance to the communities to be prepared to provide necessary metrics under the interim rule. You will be prompted by the portal to provide that information when you submit your application. Clifton Larson Allen and Powers and Sullivan, the two auditing firms, will be collecting and submitting all of the required paperwork to the federal government as required under the interim final rule. That's the benefit of the administrative fee working for the communities. One small item for the large group of 35 users observing tonight that I wanted to clarify. This portal's for use for the county ARPA funds only. We recognize that many communities have their own NEU funds. Unfortunately, the portal cannot support that because the risk, if you will, that's associated with handling a federal grant, as the gentlewoman from Cohasset just indicated, falls to the county commissioners. They cannot indemnify any such grants that are appropriated to your communities through NEU. We'll be happy to speak with you directly or offline if your community is having any difficulty getting a similar portal or process off the ground for your NEU money. We've had some of those conversations already with some communities, but just wanted to offer that differentiation. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, Mr. Buckley?
Through you, Mr. Chair, none that I see.
Okay. I would like.
Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
For those that may not be aware, the communication and the efforts between the county and the communities, at least in terms of Medway, has been incredible, and I am most appreciative since this started. For those that aren't aware, I'm also the town manager in Medway, and for those that would like to know, Paul Connors trained me in everything. So if you like it, it's all great. Otherwise, blame Paul. The reality behind it is that there is a ton of work that's gone on behind the scenes. And I want to give a shout out to Chairman Shea and also to certainly John and Bill for the work that they've done. There is a ton of money that's involved in this. There's a ton of oversight that's involved in this in each of the communities between what we're getting directly from the feds, but also what's coming through as a pass through from the county. We have our obligations and our expectations. That water treatment facility that John mentioned is actually Medway's project. That was one of the three items in terms of capital that can be utilized with the ARPA funds. So that's something that we'll be utilizing. But again, a shout out and a thank you to the county office team for the work that they've done getting us to this point.
Thank you, Mr. Boynton.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the gentleman from Westwood, Selectman Walsh.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes, when I was younger, my father used to tell me, don't thank people until you actually show up back at the door. So I do want to say you guys are taking outstanding steps towards this, and hopefully everything works out well. So thank you to the county and the commissioners for what they're doing. It's a great step in the right direction. But as my father told me, we're not home yet. So
thank you. Is there anyone else, Mr. Buckley?
Not that I see, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I just would like briefly, having acknowledged the tremendous work of the commissioners, the director, the assistant director, and the entire county administration team as being such a big boon from the county. And the reason I say that is going back to the presentation at the beginning of the meeting, we talked about people being ambassadors. And being an ambassador to our communities from the county is a great gift because unfortunately, when I presented to the Milton Select Board last year, they didn't know a lot about what the county does. As an aside, but related to it, some time ago when Sheriff Kippy Marshall was all over the county and really loved his job and connected with a lot of people, he had a person on his job who got on the state police. And we were there together. And he looked at him and he said, "You see that state police badge?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's nice and shiny. And when you go to Florida, your Norfolk deputy badge means much more than a state police badge." The power of counties outside of Massachusetts is huge. This is our opportunity to really shine and show people we can do in Norfolk County. So I encourage you, to join with me and obviously Mr. Ryan as an example in bringing this to our cities and towns, making sure that they're aware of what we do and continuing to preach the good news of county government. The next item, a housekeeping item, would be the minutes of the meeting of June 9th. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, second.
It's like a race. I don't know who that was, but I'll go with it.
Westwood and Braintree.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Beckerman, can we do this on a voice vote?
No.
Or do we have to do it on roll call?
No, I believe we have to do everything on roll call.
Okay,
It's
does a Zoom?
Zoom
Okay,
meeting. Yep, Zoom meeting.
please call the roll.
Give me one moment. Okay, Phil, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. Avon votes aye. Bellingham. Braintree.
Aye.
Brookline.
Aye.
Canton.
Yes.
Cohasset.
Aye.
Dedham.
Yes.
Dover. Foxborough.
Yes.
Franklin.
Yes.
Holbrook. Medfield. Medway.
Yes.
Millis. Milton.
Yes.
Needham. Norfolk.
Yes.
Norwood.
Yes.
Plainville.
Yes.
Quincy.
Yes.
Randolph.
Yes. Thank you, Michael.
Sharon.
Sharon, yes.
Stoughton. Walpole.
Yes.
Wellesley.
Yes.
Westwood.
Yes.
Weymouth.
Weymouth present?
Weymouth present.
Weymouth seems to have departed the meeting.
And Rentham. That is the roll, sir. So,
That is a unanimous vote, excluding Weymouth, who didn't vote. We have 76.84. Yes.
thank
Zero
you.
no.
The next item would be topics that I did not reasonably anticipate would be discussed, and I believe Mr. Polito wanted to be recognized.
Thank you. Just a couple on the old business, new business, but didn't say there, but the status of the Walpole solar panels, I've requested bills from the office on a 10-day Freedom of Information Act from the attorney bills. For 4 months, we spent $55,000 that are direct bills, and not counting the other bills that that are on the various amount each month. So it was probably spent $60,000 to $70,000 defending this thing, and it's still going on. My issue is, there was a bill at the State House sponsored by the Walpole rep and the senator from the area about this issue, requesting that it should be to change the rules. They're not sure they change the rules to this one, but going forward, they want to change. The neighbors don't want it. The town don't want it, and we're as you said, we're spending money. This will be back soon, next probably budget, to put more money in this account for the attorney fees. Because the way it's going now, I think 4 months it seemed funny. We spend 33.29.53 each month times 3, so it just seems the amount just showed up 3 times in bills about the Walpole thing. So are we gonna either cut bait in this zone, because it will come to the board for looking. Our issue is we cannot fund it. We can cut back and say, we're not going to give you any money for attorney bills. We can't stop the project, but that's not under this board's realm. But the attorney bills are. Maybe the commissioners could give you a comment on that issue.
I recognize the director on behalf of the commission.
With respect to this matter, I'll refer to Mr. Bill Buckley, who's been our point of contact on the solar project. Mr. Buckley.
Director Buckley, you're recognized.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. William Buckley, Assistant County Director, and as you all, I think, well, most of you know, I am a Walpole resident, and I live downwind from the Aggie, about 10 houses from the cow barn on the Fisher School side. Just by way of update, yes, Mr. Polito did request all of our legal bills back 5 years, which I believe he has been furnished with, specifically to the Aggie matters. There were a number of facets to that. One, there is a litigation between the Walpole Preservation Alliance, the commissioners, and the trustees. Through our attorney, Scott Lopez, who's the county's counsel, we did file a motion to dismiss in part the complaint against us, which was allowed. The real meat of that question was whether or not the project was a violation of Article 97, and that was upheld. That our request that the complainant's request for injunction was denied, so we, in a sense, won that piece. There was also an open meeting law complaint from December, which the Attorney General found had no merit. Very recently, the Walpole Zoning Board of Appeals voted to deny the application of a building permit for the second phase, the Hilltop Farm phase of the project, and Kearsarge Energy, our energy company, the county commissioners and the trustees are litigating that as well, and that has just begun in the last, I say, 2 weeks. So that case is pending. So that's sort of a snapshot in time where the project is currently. I don't know if the gentleman from Dedham has further questions.
Mr. Polito?
Yeah, I know the trustees voted for it. Not all of them did. I know that one school member and one commission didn't vote for it. But I just when I do votes, I listen to the neighbors and the residents too. That's important vote, important things to me. If I see all the neighbors up against it in the town, that's not a project most people in this board would vote for. So it's tough to see we're going to spend could be 6 figures by the time we're done with this project. Between 2 weeks into it, the board hired the attorney to represent us again with solar panel company. So, this is a lot of money, and why do we gotta keep on fighting when the neighbors in the area just don't want it? The town doesn't want it, but I think most selectmen in the area, if they're in front of in your board, you see all the people in the area against it, I don't think the board will vote for any issue like that. So I think I'd like to know why we got to keep on going after the item when we already have solar panels on the school now that's saving money to us. So why do we got to keep on going this to waste taxpayers' money? Suing, as somebody said, taxpayers' money suing taxpayers. That's what we're doing. Taxpayers' money on both sides, wasting money here.
Do you have another question, Mr. Polito?
You're not going to answer that?
There wasn't a question. It was a statement.
Well,
you made a statement about.
Are we ever going to start? What's our goal to go? Are we going to keep going with the project, or we're going to stop it someday?
Well, this currently is not before the advisory board, so I have to ask the director and the commissioners and Assistant Director Buckley to bring us up to speed.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, and the members, I think not to belabor, there are merits to the project. Again, the town is not unanimous in its opposition to the project, and we have seen throughout a tremendous amount of public input the fact that the commissioners have decided to proceed with this. We have agreements with an energy company, and we are working with a company that we have signed agreements with and following that process through. So I think the actions that I've just described are indicative of that and indicative of the county kind of continuing along the path. I can't speak to what we'll do 4 years from now, but I think just as the Dome project, for example, is a project that the commissioners are committed to because of its importance to the center of Dedham Square and the community of Dedham, and that project can change as well. But these are, as I said, these are the snapshot in time of where we are now. I can't speak to what the legal outcome would be 2 years from now and where we would be. I hope it's that the Aggie School is 100% green and a hub of energy generation for Norfolk County, but again, I really can't speculate. Through you, Mr. Chair, I think the gentleman from Braintree raised his hand.
Mr. Ryan, I can't see you, but go ahead.
What was from that? Maybe it was an error.
No, it was an error.
I just want to say the hour's pretty late. This is a long meeting. I wanted to make a motion to adjourn if it's appropriate.
I have another question, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, my God.
Well, we're here to do our job. Let's ask the questions.
Mr. Polito, may I ask if you, and you are certainly entitled to all this information and to the time of the Norfolk County Advisory Board as a member, and we respect that. But would it be in the future, as I anticipate you will have more questions, would it be appropriate or would it be reasonable if you could submit those questions in advance and or submit them directly to the county commissioners or the director if they do not pertain to anything we are taking up on the advisory board, because we're not currently taking up anything with regard to the solar panels, as an example.
When we go for extra money. Okay, the other question I have, just a fast question. The business manager at Norfolk Aggie has submitted a resignation of retirement. I just want to make sure, when I brought up earlier this year about the house issue, if we're going to hire a new person, this is for the commissioners, it's not our board now, but I like to see that house taken into consideration. If you're going to use the house to pay your bargaining, we should put it on as taxpayers and charge rent. That's my statement. That's all I want to make.
Thank you, Mr. Polito. And as you are aware from our presentation last year at the budget, the houses are being looked at or were being looked at by the Finance Committee last year. And if you remember from my presentation earlier, the Aggie is going to be an area of focus for the advisory board moving through the budget process. So your questions will be answered and you will find out more as we move through the process. But respectfully, if you could submit questions in advance, it would be helpful, I think, to all involved to get you the correct information because it's not always on hand.
Excuse me, what you say, Mr. Chairman?
It may be helpful, respectfully, if you submit questions in advance so that they have the information on hand, because some of the things that you're speaking to aren't related to the budget and may need to be investigated and brought to the meeting.
There will be a future meetings be brought up. Okay, thank you.
I appreciate it.
I'll take into consideration.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Mr. Ryan, you had a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have to go through the roll. Phil, I'm sure you're ready. And our clerk, Mr. Beckerman, is fired up and ready to go. Let's do this.
Always. All right, Avon votes aye. Bellingham. Braintree.
Aye.
Brookline.
Aye.
Canton.
Yes.
Cohasset.
Aye.
Dedham.
Aye.
Dover. Foxborough. Foxborough. Steve, I think you're muted.
Yes.
There you are. Okay, where am I? Franklin,
Aye, yes.
Holbrook, Medfield, Medway,
Yes.
Millis, Milton,
Yes.
Needham, Norfolk,
Aye.
Norwood,
Yes.
Plainville,
Yes.
Quincy,
Yes.
Randolph. Randolph? He's gone. Okay. Sharon,
Yes.
Stoughton, Walpole,
Yes.
Wellesley,
Yes.
Westwood,
Yes.
Weymouth, Rentham.
You're adjourned.
That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. It's been a long meeting. I appreciate all you've done tonight, and we'll be in touch very soon. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.